Hello people, as usual Chris VK3 Alpha Mike Lima in Melbourne, Australia, starting tonight's stream. A big surprise this week, as those of you who've tuned in on previous streams will know, the tradition, I guess you'd say, of having a Saturday night confab of this type, initially on ham radio audio only, was established by my predecessor with my call VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, Tony. However, Dave VK3ACZ carried on the tradition through the 80s, 90s and the first decades of this century. He has now vacated the bands, but he's back. And in spite of the naysayers, he has obtained a shortwave broadcasting licence. And tonight we're going to hear a bit about that. He really has broken the mould in taking an unprecedented step that no Australian amateur has yet attempted, and he's done it with flying colours. So you'll hear and see more of that this evening. It's 9:28. I have a couple of minutes to fill here. I'd like to thank the people that regularly tune in. I'll just check that I've got a stream at the moment, and let's just have a look. It seems that the connection is there. Good. And no viewers as yet, but that will change, I guess. I also have a statement to make about the legality of these transmissions, which I'll make as soon as I go to air, which will be in 1 minute's time, in response to a question from someone who claims I'm broadcasting. And I'll just flick that to Mixer. Yeah, well, it's coming on for 9:30. So I'll hit the big switch and we'll go on 147.475 megahertz, which has a range of about 100 kilometres around Melbourne. Unfortunately not reaching Dave. Hello, this is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, transmitting from Burwood East in Melbourne, and simultaneously live streaming. If you care to Google VK3AML, 9 July 2022. That is, Google the phrase VK3AML, 9 July 2022. You should find that you can bring up the visual side of the audio that I'm transmitting on 147.475. If you can't find that, try looking for my YouTube channel, which is under the name Oz Radio Historian, one word, AUSRADIOHISTORIAN. Again, that YouTube channel, Oz Radio Historian, AUSRADIOHISTORIAN, no gaps between the words, it's just one word. Well, it's been a momentous week for ham radio, because the first ham radio operator to apply, in my knowledge, for a shortwave broadcasting licence has got it. He's broken the mould, and had you been listening on 4835 kilohertz at about 4:30 this afternoon, you would have heard this.
Hello children, you're listening to Shortwave Australia, and we're broadcasting on 4835 and 2310. And we'll be listening to Mr. SL shows, which are all very interesting, and you might learn a bit of musical theory. Next time you listen to music, you won't understand it, because you think, I like that song, now you have to understand that it's all made up of minor chords and diminished sevenths and stuff like that, and you will never listen to music again in such, you won't enjoy it anymore because it's so complex, all the technicalities of music. But I don't care about that. I just listen to it. Some stuff I like, some stuff I don't, and I think 99% of people like that. But it's very good to know the ins and out, and if you listen to this you can understand and learn a lot about music and impress your friends by saying things that all those musical terms. In fact, I suggest just get a music theory book and just pull out some terms and speak them, and people think you're a virtuoso, even though you can't play anything except a gramophone. Okay, we've just turned on 2310 kilohertz, and in the 120 metre band. It might be a bit early, but we've turned it on, so it'll probably come up towards the as the night gets darker, wherever you are. And we're broadcasting on 4835 and 2310 Shortwave Australia, coming to you from Central Victoria, Outback Victoria. In fact, I'm just about to hop on the bicycle and go for a ride into the hinterland on the sunset and look at some interesting old mining leases and things like that, so that's all to the good. So you're listening to Shortwave Australia on 4835 2310, and we'll go back to the musical miscellany.
And we heard Gully Low Blues. That was Louis Armstrong and his Hot 7, recorded in 1927. Who else is on that? Johnny Dodds, yes, clarinet. Lou Armstrong, who was Louis Armstrong's wife. She's playing piano on that. Johnny Snasai on the banjo. Pete Briggs on the brass bass. And John Thomas on the trombone. May the 14th, 1927. There's a date there. Now, if I can get this CD player going, I was actually planning to offer another one of Billie Holiday's early recordings from that particular another anthology. Here we go. It may work, folks. It may work. We'll see how we go. This one's a little later. Yes. This is with Teddy Wilson and his orchestra from Nottingham.
Now, I'll fade that down there, but that is Dave VK3ACZ's new shortwave station operating from 17 kilometres north of Bendigo, called Shortwave Australia. Shortwave Australia. And if you're wondering why it was so noisy, it's because that was recorded 500 kilometres distant from Dave's transmitter in South Australia, off the Ironstone Range web SDR. I'll just bring that back to the webcam. Dave I've known for 50 years. I haven't always seen eye to eye with him. We have different politics. We see things a different way. But on this occasion, I am so filled with admiration for Dave, having absolutely waved this in the face of the naysayers. Dave is a former ABC audio and television cameraman, audio man, and for many years operated out of Ormond. He, in the course of retiring, met Michelle Guthrie, the former head of the ABC, at a staff meeting, and I believe from intermediaries who've told me the story, he ripped her to shreds over the closure of Radio Australia. So what he has done is very pointedly to apply to the ACMA for two of the old Radio Australia frequencies, 2310 kilohertz, formerly used in Northern Territory, 4835 kilohertz, formerly used for the service to the inland and the islands, and he's restarted it as Shortwave Australia, and he's doing very well at it. This is one of the most interesting developments I think I've seen politically, socially, technically, with ham radio and those involved with it for quite some time. And as you could hear in this latter part of that recording from 4:30 p.m. today, Steve VK3SL, a music teacher, a cellist, a professional cellist and music teacher, is providing his time and his efforts also for Shortwave Australia. Now, there's a story that attaches to this. I'll bring up a video made by Dave, who has recently gone bush, of course, by selling up in Melbourne. A small block here will buy acres there, and let's just have a look at what he's done this last week. Shortwave Australia, 15 kilometres north of Bendigo, 3 p.m. to around midnight daily on the air. Operator Dave Stewart, VK3ACZ.
For some time, and now we've actually done it. We're moving to our own cattle station. This is the first impressions on the first day of taking over the place. Well, there you are, the first impressions. And what can I say? This is an amazing place, a beautiful place, and I can't believe I actually own something like this. It's going to be my playpen from now on. I won't really need to go anywhere else.
And he's got friends there.
So it's fantastic.
And lots of trees to hang big antennas from. And water sources for earthing. And studios. Several studios, in fact. There's the 60 acres that Dave now has, as I say, 17 kilometres north of Bendigo. That's the northerly view looking towards the Murray River from where he is. And to give you some idea, he's 170 kilometres northwest of Melbourne, just the right distance for single hop communication on 4835 kilohertz. Here's his entry in the ACMA registry. He has the amateur advance ticket. He now has the licence for 2.31 megahertz, you see there, HF domestic broadcasting, and 4835 megahertz, 4.835. So it's all legal. He's broadcasting from there. His transmissions can be heard over the whole of southeastern Australia into South Australia particularly. First person to pick him up and record him was, of course, our friend Peter VK3ACZ. As
You're listening to Shortwave Australia on 4.835 and 2310 megahertz.
Shortwave reception on 4835.
And this is Peter 3ACZ on Wednesday.
It's about 4 p.m.
This was his first day of
I'm
licensing.
just using a small portable receiver, receiving only on the telescopic whip.
And when I say shortwave,
And another
back,
receiver.
I really meant that the old Alice Springs frequencies are back at 2310 and 4835. So I suppose it never really went away, but well, we're doing for a few dollars what the ABC couldn't do for $1.2 billion. So who knows? I think Miss Guthrie was a bit premature closing down the shortwave service.
But
anyway,
Dave
it's
isn't.
up now in private hands, and purely for entertainment for myself and anyone else who wants to listen. So we will have a different programming. I can put lots of things on that we're just really testing here, starting out, and seeing how things are going. Hopefully the signal will improve. They've got dipoles up about 60 feet. And you can find out about the licence and stuff on the ACMA site and where it is and that type of stuff. So there we are. I think we'll go back to music. This group from England, Keen, they've got some interesting songs and a bit different than normal pop music. But we're going to have proper programs, or proper-ish programs at some stage. And well, the place will be automated, so I wanted to talk on the line. So we'll go back to the music. You're listening to Shortwave Australia, and we're transmitting on 4835, daytime and early evening, and 4835, it gets really strong there, it just drops off like it's being turned off. So if you're listening and it disappears, it's not a fault here or with your radio, it's probably a fault with the ionosphere. It just turns off within about 10 seconds, it goes.
And here it is recorded from South Australia. The opening announcement, 3 p.m.
This is Shortwave Australia, where... hang on, I'll just turn another thing on. Stand by.
.4835 kilohertz.
This is Shortwave Australia commencing transmission for today, Friday, the whatever it is the 8th of June, something like that. So that's the 10th, anyway, whatever day it is. And we're starting transmission on 4835 kilohertz for the inland and the islands who might not be listening to this transmission. And if you'd like to send feedback to this line, you can send it to our phone number 0429 141859 if you'd like to send a text of reports or whatever, or any comments about the station. 0429 141849. That's an Australian number, so no, you won't be overseas listening to this, so don't worry about it. 0429 141849. We will get an email address for the station soon. My logbook of all my passwords and things and internet stuff's back at the old place, so I'll have to go and get that at some stage. So we'll continue on with some musics on this air to fill in the time scan. So here we go. Just a live announcement from Shortwave Australia. Thanks, Mr. Marks, for your text. Unfortunately, I think you might have I've sent you an email about visits, but the text, unfortunately, I can receive text on the phone, but because I'm going through Wi-Fi calling, of course Telstra's got no service here, I can receive text, but I can't transmit them. And to send a text, I have to turn off the Wi-Fi calling on the phone, have to find a place somewhere up on the roof or somewhere that has marginal Telstra coverage and send a text. So I'm sending the text via shortwave radio, so that's very good. So thanks for acknowledging your report. So we'll go back to the music of Passenger, which is... underrated artist, I think. He's had a few hits, but he's got some really good... his albums are great, just fantastic. And listen to them, sort of folky and I don't know what you'd call them, but really good. So we go back to Mr. Passenger, and there's been a bit of a squall here at the transmitter booth at Shortwave Australia, and now it's sunny again. So you never know what happens in this part of the world. So Shortwave Australia transmitting to the inland and the islands, and back to our musics. Well, there we are. I think we're going to change mood now. So that's relaxing musics we just had, the classical musics. There's plenty more that came from, and that was the Mr. SL's show from the 28th to 9th. 2018. I'll listen to the birds. The green parrots flying to the sunset. Well, as I say, we'll have something quite different now, and I think we'll go back to the modernistic, futuristic music. And this is, oh, by the way, you're listening to, listen to the birds. You're listening to Shortwave Australia, and we're transmitting on 4835, and after dark we also transmit on 2310. So I think 4835 hangs in for a couple of hours and goes berserk. Well, it seems to go quite good up north, but so you might have to tune into 2310. Shortwave Australia, doing testing here. Well, not really testing, we're really fully operational now, but to have a few improvements to make, obviously. Shortwave Australia on 4835 and or 2310. And we'll go to the 101 strings.
I'll just interrupt there to say this is actually VK3AML on 147,475, just showing you what Dave VK3ACZ has done with the acquisition of a shortwave broadcasting licence. Of course, I can't relay entertainment programs, the music as such, but I can give you a selection of the sort of things that are happening in these setting up periods where Dave frequently has to be his own transmitter engineer, panel operator, queuing person, switch room. He's doing the lot, as must be obvious from the distractions there. But this is the most interesting development I've seen in ham radio in terms of the leaping into actual broadcasting for some considerable time. Back to a sample of what Dave 3ASC is doing up in northern Victoria.
And this is Astro... what is it? Oh, anyway, it's Astro songs of beyond 2000. So that's what they thought music would sound like before 2000. So we'll listen now to the 101 strings.
And we jump forward.
When it's the 45's queued up. Here we go. I have to say this isn't coming across very well, this music. Maybe it's out of phase or something, so it's absolutely terrible. So I have to go with something else, I think. You're on Shortwave Australia, and we're transmitting on 4835, and after dark we go to 2310 as well. So all the reminders, all the channels there you can listen to, so I might have a listen to something else. I think it might be a bit better. Look, it might fit into, how about some medieval folk music? That might be nice. So we'll have an hour of medieval folk music, unless you want to hear another Steve show. Why don't we have another Steve show? Yes, that might be an idea.
He's talking about Steve 3SL.
And from 2018, the 27th to the 10th, 18 this time, so we'll go ahead with that.
Good evening to listeners, one and all, who are tuned in. Well, back on board. It has been another crazy week. It's the run of the mill here, and this is sort of a bit of light repose, I suppose, but very spontaneous one at that. We have a variety program tonight, all conjured up in the last moments. There's not much planning here, but we have something of some interesting material to keep the wheels in motion. As per usual, we will start off something from the 20s. We go back to 1926, a very early recording of Ben Pollack and his orchestra with a young Benny Goodman. In fact, Benny Goodman is only 15 or 16 on this recording, one of the very first recordings with Mr. Goodman. You hear him play a solo and quite a hot mid-20s number called Deed I Do.
This is Shortwave Australia on 4835, and now, as the sun has just set here in the outback, we have got 2310 running as well. So it may not be dark enough yet, but 2310 is up and running, and we'll keep 4835 running as well till, well, whenever really. See how it goes. It seems to disappear locally after an hour or so of darkness, but now seems to go further afield, so we're just still tracking where these channels frequencies go.
And I might mention, this is recorded from Dave's transmission from a point 500 kilometres distant from Dave in South Australia in the Ironside Range. Back to Dave.
So Shortwave Australia, you can listen on 4835, keep listening there, or if you want to tune up or down to 2310. But you may or may not be able to get it. See how it goes. There's a bit of traffic on that road today. Okay, so we'll continue on with the show, and it's a lovely day here. It's a bit cloudy, but it's a beautiful evening, and sunset and the false sunset on the other side's coming up or down or whatever it does. don't want to bash me, he'll get tangled up in the feed lines again. It's all very sad, really. You have to you just can't leave wires and ropes laying around here. Okay, we'll go back to the music, and this is a Mr. Steve show from 2018. And we'll find out what selection's got for you tonight. So we'll continue listening on Shortwave Australia 4835 and now 2310 as well.
Yeah, Ben Pollack's band. He was a bit of a maverick, and he soloed on that. Did the vocal solo. Later in life, poor old Mr. Pollack didn't feel like he'd been recognised in mentoring pioneer jazzmen, and for that and other reasons, he took his own life, sadly, in 1971. So, yes, it's quite a sad story in the end, but he made some great records in the mid to late 1920s, early 30s, and he had many different ventures in his life. Quite an interesting figure, but it was a good arrangement. Oh, what's happened this week? Well, it's been boredom on the domestic front, but I did make it to the tip shop. Yes, that was one of the highlights. I went to the tip shop and I found a 78. Yes, I went through a big pile of records, and lo and behold, amidst them all was one of the very early electric recordings for Victor, EA71, which dates it to about 1925. Probably most likely late 1925, and a record featuring Roger Wolf Kahn and his orchestra, and a recording called a song called Spanish Medley. So I think we'll have a listen to that next. Was certainly a musician who I just have great fondness for, and so I transgress. We'll have to get back to the topic. We'll hear the Ravel Barnett Sonata Middle Movement Blues played by Mr. Szigeti, and listen to this, it's wonderful.
Well, we'll listen to that, but just better make a pardon me, cough, cough, cough. Please stand by. Yeah, you're listening to Shortwave Australia, and we're transmitting on what are we? 4835 kilohertz, 4835 or 4.835 megahertz, and we're transmitting on these airs. And after dark, we are on 2310 as well, 2310 kilohertz, and we're transmitting Mr. Steve's show from 1980. What is the date of this one? The 28th of the 9th, 2018. So it's a couple of years old. And we walked to Romania and saw the villages those people lived in. They're probably all bombed up now, so just as well he went when he did. He'd probably only see rubble now, and a few notes, few
Wrong
scripts,
country, Dave.
lead sheets written by those composers floating in the wind and blowing around in the bomb craters, with the napalm dripping down and the missiles flying across. I wonder if we're being heard in Romania. Maybe so. I doubt it. Well, we could. I think certain times it could be heard in Romania. Anyway, this is Shortwave Australia, and we're on 4.835 megahertz and 2310 after dark as well. We're running them in parallel, so 4835 stays running until it gets hit by atmospheric propagation problems. And the 160. No, 169. It's the Shortwave Australia feedback line. If you want to ring up this station and give a reportables or something, the phoning number is 0429 141849. That number again for the shortwave listener feedback line, 0429 141849 on Shortwave Australia, coming your way on 4835 and after dark also on 2310. And I think we'll get back to our musics. Oh, and I did like that octopus's dance. That was really good. Anyway, back to the more serious stuff, possibly. Yes, here we go. You're listening to Shortwave Australia, and we're transmitting on 4835 kilohertz or 2310, depending on where you are. 4835 during daytime and early evening, And 2310 usually is better after that. What's VK now? It's Shortwave Australia on 2310 and 4835. We're transmitting to the inland and the islands on shortwave from a location in central Victoria. And so we can get back to our listening pleasure with Mr. Steve's show. Musical education, you'll find out so much about music you wouldn't even know existed. You'll never be able to listen to music anymore because you'll be so enthralled with the technicalities of it. Anyway, we'll continue on with another music show on Shortwave Australia on 4835 or 2310.
And that was Dave VK3ACZ, who has now acquired commercially, or not commercially, he's doing it entirely as a hobby activity, the broadcast frequencies 4835 and 2310, formerly Radio Australia or ABC frequencies, which rather pointedly were closed by Michelle Guthrie about 7 years ago, and Dave has revived it. And instead of being on a $1.3 billion budget, he's on a budget of about $75. Apparently, the ACMA cannot give away HF broadcasting licences now, so they're available reasonably cheaply. The problem is that you're expected to go on the air, provide a service, and of course Dave has acquired that licence from 6th of July, middle of this week, when he went to air, to October of this year. So he's apparently paid for a quarter. We'll see how it goes. I think Dave also will see how it goes. But to the naysayers who said that amateurs could not get a shortwave licence, well, nuts to you. And I might add with all of that, the naysayers I've heard of this week who have said that what I'm doing is broadcasting. It's not. I'm specifically transmitting documentary material of an instructive nature. I'm keeping it to either science, technology or ham radio itself. And I've been at it for about 3 years, and I've questioned the RIs about it. And I have a copy, if you see in the back here, I don't know whether I can lean back far enough, you can see a number of filing cabinets, one filing cabinet of which has a complete PDF hard copy printout of the Radio Communications Act 1995 and amendments. And it appears that I am working with this live streaming and the weekly transmission on the same basis that any club broadcast would have had, or indeed the Old Timers Network's weekly transmission, or indeed the Wireless Institute's weekly Sunday morning news broadcast, all covered under the same laws, and I am observing them. And for the naysayers, by the way, light beam communication. I went to the Wireless Institute in 1972 and inquired about that and was told, "Oh, it's illegal. You haven't got a ham licence yet. You shouldn't do it." So I went to the P&T's Department Regulatory and Licensing section, and I got a permit. Anybody can get a permit, doesn't matter if you even have a ham radio licence. And that permit, 45 years ago, eventually resulted in myself and Mike Roth 7MJ having the world DX record for light communication in 2005, and in 2021 being the first to link Victoria and Tasmania by modulated light. Another one, narrowband television. I demonstrated that we could do it back in 1972. Went to a certain institute, was told that it was illegal, that I would take up the whole of the band, that it was too broad bandwidth. Result was, I got encouragement from Britain. We started the Narrowband Television Association, which is going to this day, almost 50 years later, with a membership of over 1,000. Another one, extended bandwidth sideband. All the CW operators saying, "Oh, it's illegal to run more than 3 kilohertz bandwidth, or even 2.7. Get with it, mate. Whoever these naysayers are, we are living in a changing technical and legal environment. It is up to you as a ham operator to familiarise yourself with the present, I emphasise present, Radio Communications Act, which says that extended bandwidth sideband in this country is legal up to a bandwidth of 8, I repeat, 8 kilohertz of audio. And there I will leave it, except to say I have here a symbol of the first type of amateur communications, a Morse key, which many operators were saying should be the only legitimate means of ham communication back in the 50s, perhaps into the 60s. Well, they resisted sideband. Then they resisted digital. What I want to do is to have this Morse key gold-plated and to suggest to anybody who thinks that live streaming is illegal, or that indeed these Saturday night transmissions are illegal, give them the gold-plated Morse key and suggest that they insert it sideways. Got it? Good. Let's move on. One of the most interesting developments of recent years has been the starting of the SHERBROOKE Radio Club, a truly friendly group of people. And I have for you a video of some aspects of the SHERBROOKE Radio Club which I visit on a monthly basis. Here we go. Glimpses of SHERBROOKE Radio Club and its meetings at Boronia Wesleyan Methodist Church, 4th of July 2022. That was this Monday, I should say. I usually go via the local tram, which takes me to a terminus at Vermont South, where I change to bus, and this takes me out to Ferntree Gully, usually wearing a mask, as is required by the PT. At this time of the year, you end up the trip in the darkness, so I'll switch to some photographs I took when we were in summer, and I could show you the actual venue. It's in the shadow of the Dandenong Ranges. That's One Tree Hill at the back, Chandler's Hill in front, not too far from Boronia. And this is the church in Boronia, the Wesleyan Methodist Church, where we have the meetings. And a group of cars outside covered in a hedgehog of aerials, as you'll see. And this week, this is a typical meeting, Peter VK3ACZ in the front there, quite a few people I recognise at the back. Average turn-up is about 20, maybe 25 members. There's Jeremy VE3PKC about to give a lecture. One particularly interesting thing that turned up this week was this DSP software-defined receiver. The size of 2 matchboxes side by side with a specifically well-designed audio radiating device. I won't call it a speaker because it's a very non-standard design. But the interesting thing is on the back of this, rather than just being a back for insert batteries, you have a fully active touchscreen with all of the controls of a computer-controlled software-defined receiver. These things are relatively recently out of China, apparently. It covers the whole of HF. It covers from 50 kilohertz to 2 gigs. And all modes, that's receiving FM, as you see there, bit of video. It's the mumble of the crowd at the radio club in the background. We were tuning around on this, looking at ham bands and whatnot. It does have some slight interference problems from its own touchscreen, but it's a brilliant idea. The Waxon, this is brought by Peter VK3ACZ to show us the low-price operation on 2 meters and 70. These battery packs are being manufactured by one of the guys in the group. Very handy. They're about 30 amp hours. That's a 40 amp hour developmental one, not yet complete, but that was on sale at the club meeting. Lithium iron phosphate. This is a particularly interesting historical item that was brought to the meeting on Monday night. A LARC receiver from the very early days of germanium transistors, when germanium transistors were worth several pounds each in Australian money. That dates from about 1960. And it was a 2-transistor receiver. Everything was reflexed to get the maximum performance out of it. The first transistor, as you can see, is reflexed with some positive feedback. second transistor is also reflexed as an audio amplifier. But these work quite viably as broadcast band receivers with an internal ferrite rod antenna. Tiny, very light, and right at the start of germanium technology. Every time I go to the club, somebody brings something interesting like this, and it's well worthwhile having a look in. There's Jim having a lecture to the group. We have our group Epson video projector, and
as usual, I'll put up a G5R.
quick shot of Jim addressing the crowd. 3AMN. Just a glimpse. I didn't want to take too much of this. And with the video projector, we request various instructional videos, and they get thrown up on the screen, and we have a session of tossing ideas around. How does this work? How does that work? As a result of watching these short videos at every meeting. It's not the only thing we do, of course. A big emphasis of the Sherbrooke Radio Club is camping. And they regularly have camps where they set up portable stations up the bush. That's a view from outside the church of the nearby Mount Dandenong television transmitters. In order from left, the old Channel 9 tower at the observatory at Mount Dandenong. I think the next one is the Channel 2 tower, then Channel 7. And the big one on the right is the Channel O tower, through which all Melbourne TV is now radiated, I think, not sure about that. And now I'm transmitting at the moment through this antenna, and we have a problem. The mast is too heavy for me to bring down on my own. The HF antenna's rope, the black rope, is caught in there, so it's not the best situation. And the VHF UHF antenna, the white one, has slipped down about 10 centimetres from the top of the pole. We have a slightly high SWR as a result, and my output on 147.475 may be down. But you're looking at the antenna through which I'm transmitting at the moment. It's a Diamond X7000 three-section antenna, about 5.6 metres long, purports to have 8.3 dB gain at 2 metres all round. There we are. That's what you're hearing me through. Okay, so much for the Sherbrooke Radio Club. Feel free to look them up on the internet. VK3KID is the official call sign. And I think you'll find them by Googling that call sign, Sherbrooke Radio Club. Another thing that happened this week was that I went up to One Tree Hill with my portable digital slow scan television outfit transmitting pictures, and we had a very interesting time. What we were looking for was a venue that had none of the VHF crud problems of Mount Dandenong. So myself, Peter VK3ACZ, Tom VK3FTOM, and later Gary VK3GLC all turned up at One Tree Hill at the southern end of the Dandenong Ranges. That's the area on the left of that red spot there. You can see down the bottom Ferntree Gully, further left Boronia, and this is the southern end of the Dandenong Range as it sort of curves around towards Melbourne. And on the left there, it doesn't show up so well on that contour map, but if I substitute that map, you'll see the circle on the left above 500 metre contour. All of that pink area and the maps that you're seeing on the live stream is above 500 metres contour, so very good for VHF. And on the left there, you'll see one little area, a picnic ground, that's above 500 metres, and we were wondering if we were sufficiently far from Mount Dandenong to avoid the crud on VHF. And we were. Peter VK3ACZ brought his HF gear. It was equally quiet from that point of view, not too many power lines near there. So I can thoroughly recommend One Tree Hill as a place to do portable operation.
I'm currently on the bus.
And here's Tom.
I'm on the way to meet Chris VK3AML at his place, and then he and I are going to go up and meet Peter VK3ACZ and do a bit of portable operatings from One Tree Hill up in the Dandenong Ranges. Come along for the ride and see what we get up to. 7 Tree Hill, I'll be back with the magic of editing. VK3ACZ.
And Tom shot quite a bit of this. We've pulled our 2 sets of video. This is Tom arriving via bus, coming up, I think, Waverley Road on his way to me. And he, like myself, is a PT user. This is in our lounge room when I was setting up to take stuff away. There I am packing stuff into a backpack. Everything went into the backpack with the exception of the antenna mast and antenna, which stows down to about 5'6" long. We arrived at Ferntree Gully and had some lunch over in a cafe over the way. Were picked up by Peter VK3ACZ, and this is taken from the front of Peter's car, which is about to go up the hairpin bends known as Devil's Elbow above Ferntree Gully in Ferntree Gully National Park. Here we go. Winding back and forth up to 500 metres. Can be a little bit of a tricky road, particularly with slick weather. There I am in the red, setting up my antenna. Peter VK3ACZ tossing a weight up into the trees and then pulling up an HF flower pot antenna. After about 4 tries it worked. There's my slow scan system, and I went for a bit of a walk around. We set up our shop inside that stone rotunda, the smaller of 2 rotundas there, and very close to the site of the old lookout tower that used to be on One Tree Hill. Became unsafe about 1985 and was demolished. And that tower stood there, where now those stones are a Kokoda memorial, Second World War memorial. So that's a full 360-degree rotation. There's my VHF antenna on the right. And we'll go into the rotunda to see what the boys are up to. Peter had set up his transmitter by that time on the left, Tom on the right, and me on the extreme right. And that's Gary, VK3GLC, on the left. All going on air. Whereabouts is this bloke?
And never say when you're listening.
That guy's in the States. KT something.
That's unusual. Normally I'm next cab off the pile up when they go QRT.
There's my digital slow scan system, the little VHF rig, 50 watts. That's the interface between the computer and the radio. And I was transmitting those pictures to Terry, VK3FTJS, in Hoppers Crossing. There's Tom, 3FTOM, with his handheld, talking to Terry, 3FTJS. And now a quick listen to 27 megs.
Beautiful, mate, delicious. I had some dumplings in the kitchen.
That's better.
I wanted to hear about his dumplings.
No, that's H. Apparently he's got a foundation licence, but
Has he?
he
Oh.
brags about running the 7610. So,
All right. Oh well. These friendly little fellas pestered us for food through the day. They're obviously used to being fed. This is a very young one, young magpie. But he hung around. He was standing within about 3 inches of our feet, actually. I suppose they have the wherewithal to get out of the way, but friendly little guy on the bot, looking for food. This slightly amused me. It was a group of Japanese students who were looking at the Kokoda Memorial, and I really wondered what, in an ancestral way, they were thinking of the whole situation. Something very funny about that. 15 metres.
VK4JU. You're 5 and 9 slots, over. Okay, well you're 5 and 6, so you're 5 and 6 there. Yeah, it's are you running barefoot? You just running 100 watts?
Here he is.
From left, Tom, Peter 3ACZ and Gary 3GLC.
It works.
Peter was looking up the addresses of these people on his mobile phone. And this rotunda was a very convenient operating location. It would be good even in bad weather. We had an exceptional day considering it's winter.
Company up north, and when I retired within 2 years, I moved to Apache County.
How do the signals here compare with Belgrave South?
Depends on the time of day.
Signals are similar to Belgrave South. At this point, Peter was battling over the horizon radar.
Because I normally don't bother. Actually, it was funny because the guy said the last time we worked is on 10 metres. Oh, did we?
Better memory. Probably has a very good computerised...
Oh, they all do. Yeah, everybody does except me. I've got to pay for it.
And what a nuisance over the horizon radar can be if it happens to be on your net frequency. Listen to it.
That's keeping some countries safe.
Farting away. And now these are pictures transmitted by myself on One Tree Hill, received at Terry, Hoppers Crossing, F3FTJS, and then Terry posted them on to the EasyPal Facebook group so that everybody could see these. So instantaneously as I took these, I was able to transmit them to Terry across the bay, about 50 kilometres distant. Not a great distance, but we might try it from a further hilltop soon. There's Tom operating his gear. And our friend on the ledge of the place. There's my transmitting gear for pictures.
2 metres VHF.
And we're actually transmitting one of the pictures there. That funny grinding noise. Myself talking to Scotty, 3CSS.
That's really good. Yeah, how you going, Chris? Just been helping you. He's been back in Melbourne for a few days, doing a few family things, and
But I just wondered,
Joe and I were around there giving him a little bit of help with his house. So that
I just wondered whether
that's all good. You got a lovely signal up from. I just caught the tail end of it as I switched on. Here it sounds.
And Scotty's over west of Werribee, so it's quite a distance.
You've got a ripper signal. So what you been doing? Or what are you doing? 3AML, 3CSS.
Partly, I got the offer of a lift up here by Peter, 3ACZ.
You're right on the radio you've got at the moment. Okay, I'll let you go, and I might sneak out.
3BYY?
VK3 Bravo Yankee Yankee.
VK3BYY. Yeah, whereabouts were you again?
Yeah, over in Watania there, Chris.
Oh, that's real dear.
So pretty much I guess to where you
That's
are.
all of 5 kilometres away.
Your favourite spot up there. Yeah, extremely good signal there.
Yeah, VK3BYY, VK3AML. There was somebody underneath you. Would the other station care to try? VK3YHT, is that Geelong? Oh, okay, you're getting through about strength 8. No problem reaching most of Victoria from up that high, 500 metres elevation where this is. 500 metres. Are you getting us okay? Running 50 watts, currently pedestrian mobile with a 20 amp hour lithium battery. VK3YHT, was it? VK3AML.
That is correct. Well, we're running about 18 watts at the bottom of the coax. The antenna is X7000, which is a tri-bander, 2 metres 1723, and the 30C split up in the air, and the cables is LDF 550, over.
Yeah, well, you're getting out pretty well. I suspect I'm losing a lot of... this is on 70 centimetres, which I wasn't really set up well for. I was much better set up for 2 metres. It's not the standard RG58, but it's the same size, and I haven't got my close glasses on. And here are some photos of the
Thanks for the signal report for the 5.9 plus 10. Yeah, I was going to put up my dipole in a sloper configuration, but Peter ACZ goes, try out my flower pot antenna. So that's what we're playing with at the moment. VK3 Zulu Hotel, VK3 FTO.
Steve Haynes.
I know it's working nicely, very, very loud and clear down here on the flatlands. Enjoy your DXing. I hope you can hear something up there. VK3 FTO and VK3 ZH.
Yeah, okay, no worries.
Oh, sounds like you and Chris have got some good stuff set up there, and so you got 10 metres up, and obviously 2 metres with the Easy Pal there. What else have you got there, Tom? Over.
I've got 70 centimetres. Peter ACZ brought with him but hasn't set up. Peter ACZ's with us, and he's brought stuff for 20. He hasn't set it up yet, but he's got it with him.
Okay. Oh, well, sounds like a good day. I guess it's school holidays at the moment, and people are out and about, I guess, over.
Yeah, I've been working still Monday, Tuesday, but the rest of the week with all the Year 12 stuff I've got off, which is good. It's good to have the time off. VK3EJ, VK3FTO.
Yeah, all right. Good on you, Tom. Yeah, interesting to be able to hear you from where you are. I think One Tree Hill's a fair way out east in the eastern suburbs, and I'm on the northwest. So, yeah, doing well on ground wave here. Over.
Yeah, I'm only running 5 watts. I'm just running the FT817. The FT817 is all we're running here as a transceiver. So 5 watts and, yeah, just a flower pot antenna.
Okay, so that, yeah, I got that photo that Chris sent through on EasyPal. It's got, I think that's you there standing with, yeah, it looks like an FT817 with...
New latitudes at least, altitudes, I mean, and I don't know about the storms. You may get storms now as the weather is changing all over the world, but I don't think you had them in the past.
Peter VK3ACZ at work.
Oh, that's right.
My location particularly, beaming over the North Pole, IK0, Papa Hotel, Yokohama.
Peter was running fairly high power, I think 100 watts. He has a 100 amp hour battery with him.
Good morning. Name here is Marco. Mike Alpha Radio Charlie Ocean. You're good 5 and 9, over.
As you can hear, One Tree Hill is remarkably free of static and man-made noise, which really surprised all of us. Excellent for HF, excellent for VHF.
Alpha Charlie Zulu. Kilo 3 Alpha Charlie Zulu. Victor Kilo 3 Alpha Charlie Zulu.
VK3 America Charlie Zulu. We have some steady crash at the moment. Peter here, 5 and 6, 5 and 5, 5 by 6 Peter today, over.
Thank you, Laro, for the 5 and 6. You are 5 and 9 plus into Melbourne. Big signal from you today there, Laro. Over.
Thank you for 5-9 plus in Melbourne, dear Peter. And we made last QSO on 10 meter last April. We made last QSO on 10. Nice to see you again on 20. And my name is Lauro, Peter, okay?
Roger, Laro. It's sounding really good down here into Melbourne. Thanks for the contact, Laro. Big 7-3 to you, over.
Thanks for your call from Melbourne. VK3ACZ, IK40. Ciao, Peter. Thank you.
Ciao, gracias, Laro. Bye-bye. VK3TBN mobile VK3ACZ just bumped the power back up to 100 and didn't get the name or anything, so come back with the name.
10 metre operation.
Papa Echo Tango Echo Radio, over.
Yeah, no worries, great name, Peter, great name.
Oh, that's right.
And on mobile at the moment, just got underneath 4 bridges, about to get some 5 rings set off on the ring road, running about 50 watts from the Yeti. And moving in here as you would, big line of sight and 100 watts, so I'm not too surprised that the signal's good. Hopefully a bit of chitter chatter here.
This one isn't DX.
VK3 Tango Bravo November Mobile.
Yeah, VK3TBN, VK3ACZ returning. Yeah, we're up at, close to 2,000 feet, so we're getting a fairly good ground wave with you. No problems with your signal.
Cable to sail.
Nothing down here at the moment.
Oh, roger that.
I'm just having my lunch. I'm going to have my lunch. Chicken noodle soup with chicken, real chicken.
Back to 27 megs again.
Beautiful, mate. Delicious. I had...
And a final look around. Trouble is that my camera, when I'm holding it up to my face, my mouth is right next to the microphone on it, and I sound like Darth Vader, huffing and puffing. It's like a demonstration obscene phone call. Heavy breather. Listen to it. I think I'll turn down that sound effect, but this is just to show the facilities that are available on One Tree Hill. It's quite well set up for picnicking. It's probably best to go up there during the week rather than on the weekend. We were there on the Wednesday. In fact, this was the day that Dave started transmitting from his new broadcast station, shortwave broadcast station up north of Bendigo.
Shadows, Peter is still doing his bit on HF. If I don't trip over stuff in the meantime.
Oh, get that microphone away from your mouth, Long. Dear, oh dear.
Here is Peter's flower pot antenna.
There's Peter's wife in the background, Sandra. And it goes up into the tree.
Hanging from that tree up there. And there's the rig and Peter.
Cursing about over the horizon radar.
Yes, that's been going on for quite a while.
Yeah, thank you guys. Bob, can you see the shoeies there, please, over?
Anyway, Gary 3GLC departed on his chopper, a rather flash device, as you can see. And we took a final walk around One Tree Hill looking at the various facilities there. It's a pity that the lookout tower isn't there anymore. And there were people looking at the Kokoda Monument, where the lookout tower used to be, which we could see through one of the stone windows of the rotunda that we were in. That's my VHF antenna, the white one on the left. Beyond that, further to the left, was part of the HF antenna, and our friend persisted in pestering us for food. Well, so much for Wednesday and the field day up at One Tree Hill. I'd like to thank all the participants in that, not only those who are up on the hill, Tom 3FTOM, Peter 3ACZ, Gary 3GLC, but all of the people that contacted us through the day. We had no lack of contacts, and the HF conditions were actually pretty good. This is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima. on 147.475 and simultaneously live streaming. If you look up the phrase VK3AML 9 July 2022, you should be able to dial up the video that accompanies this audio, or indeed look for my YouTube channel, which is under the name Oz Radio Historian, AUSRADIO HISTORIAN, Oz Radio Historian, one word, and the latest upload should be there. Now, the second issue of the night is digital transmitting on HF, and I'm not personally very impressed with the audio quality that can be at the moment derived from this, but the fact that they can transmit fully intelligible speech in a 1 kilohertz bandwidth and almost be received just above the noise where sideband struggles is impressive. One of the VK5s has been instrumental in developing this form of codec 2, I think it's called, that's used with this narrowband FreeDV. And a Canadian who has previously contributed to our transmissions, Jeremy VE3PKC in Toronto. And hello to Jeremy, if you're looking in at the moment. Thank you very much for the usage of your material. Hope there are no objections to this particular one. But it's such an excellent engineering analysis of FreeDV that I think it's well worth running. Jeremy VE3PKC.
Good morning, it's Jeremy. It's Thursday. Good morning, it's Jeremy. It's Thursday, October the 8th. We're in Toronto here, and we've got a new partial lockdown. And unfortunately, it's too cold to bicycle. My bicycle's behind me here, and the gym's closed. So, but the sun is shining, and I have my Colombian coffee here, so nothing could be better. And I want to talk about HF radio, which is my favorite subject. A couple of days ago, I was listening, or actually reading, an HF radio forum, and one manufacturer put a video on YouTube showing his radio. It was operating about 90 kilometers away from the base station, and it was using NVIS, and the SSB voice was just at the threshold, so you could hardly make it out. And then he switched to digital voice. It was incredible. Although the digital voice has a sort of a computerized sound to it, it was actually perfect. You could make out every single word. So I thought, let's do an experiment. Let's compare SSB with the amateur radio digital voice, FreeDV. And I'm going to use the same setup, the modem evaluation setup that I have in my HF ebook, using Psychos, and we're going to test it out and see how it works. Now, to use FreeDV, if you're just receiving, you can use the program as it is. It's designed to go with a HF transceiver, so you need two sound cards. You need a sound card on your computer, and you need a sound card in the transceiver or an external one. So for the sound card, I'm going to use this little guy here. It's a USB external sound card. I use that when with my Raspberry Pi SDR development. So let's look at, I'm going to look at my blog post here, and it's called HF SSB versus digital voice. So if you go down here, there's my Psychos model that I use for evaluation purposes. So let's bring it up here. So there's the model. So what happens is that in SSB, for instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read in an SSB waveform, which is going to be just a test waveform calling CQ. I'm going to read it in here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to bandpass filter it for an SSB transceiver, and I'm going to add random noise to that, and then I'm going to output it. Now, Psychos needs structures versus wave files, so you have to put the wave file into the console editor and convert it to a structure, and then vice versa. Okay, so that's the idea there. So if you go down here, this is from my HF ebook. I did this before, and you can vary the sigma or the peak-to-peak noise value, and I'm just taking, this is kind of an analog way of measuring a signal-to-noise ratio, so you can use it visually. I've just measured the input signal level and peak-to-peak, and I've taken the noise peak-to-peak. And this is the readability. So you can see here around signal to noise ratio of 9, the readability drops, and around 3, you can hardly make the signal out. Let's listen to this. Okay, so I've recorded this already. So let's look at signal to noise ratio. Let's say a perfect signal to noise ratio. Let's listen to this. We'll open this with Windows Media Player.
CQ 20 meters, CQ 20 meters, CQ 20. This is VE3PKC, VE3PKC, Victor, Echo 3, Peter, Kilowatt Charlie, calling CQ 20 meters and standing by.
Okay, so that's a perfect signal. Let's look at when we get down to 9 dB signal to noise ratio. So here we're going to have some readability problems.
CQ 20 meters, CQ 20 meters, CQ 20. This is VE3PKC, VE3PKC.
So you can make it out, but hardly. There's a huge noise, and when we get down to 3 dB, we can hardly make out the signal at all. So let's listen to that.
CQ 20 meters, CQ 20 meters, CQ 20. This is VE3PKC.
So that's my threshold there, around, let's say, 3 to 9 dB. That signal collapses with SSB, and you can't make it out. So here's my digital voice simulation. So what I'm going to do is, you have to set up this program here. There's FreeDV, and what you have to do in the audio configuration is you have to set up for transmit and receive. So in the transmit direction, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my test waveform, CQDX. I'm going to feed that in to my laptop into the FreeDV transmit end. I'm going to use VB cable. It's sort of a virtual cable, so it takes the output of the player and puts it right into the computer, and then I get out the digital, the FDV equivalent of this wave file, and I record that in Audacity. And then that wave file I feed into Psychos, I add the noise, and then I output it at various signal to noise ratios. In the receive direction, I open these various signal to noise ratios, and then I feed it into FDV and I listen to it. So the results I get are in the table here. This is a graph showing you, this is the input signal, this is the digital FDV signal, and this is the noise I've added to it, and that's the signal plus noise. That's the spectrum. And we'll look at this in a minute. We'll feed a signal into here and see it decoding. And these are the results. So I find that at a signal to noise ratio of -1, I have perfect readability. And remember, we're listening to kind of a computerized, it's a hollow sound, but every word is recognizable. So at -1 dB, perfect readability, but then it starts to collapse. At -2 dB, you get 10% of the words missing and the threshold has been passed. And then let's say at -2.5 dB, it's unreadable. We can listen to that. So let's do that. Okay, so what I've got here is I've loaded a file. This is n equals 0.1, so I've got no noise at all. So let's listen to a perfect signal. So I've got this thing running now on receive.
CQ 20 meters, CQ 20 meters, CQ 20. This is VE3PKC, VE3PKC, Victor.
So that's a perfect signal. Now let's load in, let's close this, and we'll load in another file. Let's load in, it's gone at 0.8. Let's load in 0.6. I think 0.6 was, yeah, perfect readability, should be. Let's play that.
CQ 20 meters, CQ 20 meters, CQ 20. This is VE3PKC, VE3PKC.
Okay, so that's perfect readability. Let me load in 0.7. We're going to start to make errors now. So let's close that. And we'll load in the 0.7. And we'll play that. And we're going to get about 10% of words missing.
CQ 20 meters, CQ 20 meters, CQ 20. This is VE3PKC. VE3PKC. Victor, Echo, 3. Peter, Kilowatt Charlie.
So there's a few words missing there. And finally, at 0.8, this is a threshold, it's pretty well gone there. So let's load in that. So there's 0.8. So let's run that.
CQ 20 meters, CQ 20 meters, CQ 20. This is VE3PKC. VE3PKC. Victor, Echo, 3. Peter, Kilowatt Charlie.
That sounded pretty good. Let's try another one. Maybe I was too pessimistic there. Let's try 1.0.
Jeremy is progressively reducing the sig to noise and showing that to a certain point, a hinge point, a knee, there's not much loss of audibility of the or of intelligibility of the signal.
CQ 20 meters, Victor, Echo, Peter, Kilowatt Charlie.
Okay, so that's 1.0. So on this computer, my threshold is down at 1.0, so it's around -3 dB. But anyways, in conclusion then, we can see that the voice, the SSB, starts to degrade between 3 and 9 dB, whereas the digital voice, it's around -1 to -3 dB. So that's a considerable improvement.
And sincere thanks to Jeremy VE3PKC for the usage of that clip. I might point out, though, that with selective fade, different parts of the passband are affected. So in actual fact, feeding in just white noise in the back of the signal is only part of the story, and the signal can be degraded in a number of other ways, by static crashes, by selective fade, by multipath, which amounts to the same thing as selective fade, just the cause and effect. So to me, this whole area is an area of watch this space. I'm not presently impressed by the audio quality. With a bit more bandwidth and a bit more intelligent compression and possibly an improvement in the multi-subcarrier technique, we may see improvements in the future. In fact, I'm sure we will. I mean, they do use a form of digital DRM for high-quality audio broadcasting on HF, and were it not for the fact that you have to pay a licensing fee for that form of DRM, I'm sure a lot of amateurs would be using it. But it will be interesting to see what goes on with digital communication on HF. I'll run another lecture on that next week. In the meantime, we've got 15 minutes to kill before the opening of our QSO time. So I'll just give you a bit of historical stuff. A film called Flight Plan, made in 1950, talking about air radio in Australia, which shows how much avionics and, in fact, aviation has changed in the last 72 years. Flight Plan, 1950.
It may be a fall from a horse, sometimes a sick baby, or an accident in a mine. At Culgra, out from Alice Springs, it's a stockman with a broken leg, a common thing on cattle stations during the muster.
US from HBR, US from HBR, I have an urgent medical.
Pedal harder.
Medical for you. One of the stockmen has...
The pedal radio message goes straight to the nearest flying doctor base. If the case is urgent, it is only minutes before the doctor is in the air.
All right. I will come down straight away. Over.
In a country like Australia, the plane has endless uses. It has been used for bushfire spotting, locating schools of fish, finding lost travelers or ships at sea. It has even gone to the farm, helping to fertilize the land and sow the seed and dust the crop. Airliners of the intercity route have made passenger carrying a major industry.
Attention! Will all passengers on Skymaster service to Sydney and Brisbane please board the aircraft in front of the lounge?
From Adelaide and Melbourne, Brisbane and Sydney, with speed and economy, regularity and safety, they move back and forth across the country carrying 1.5 million people a year, more than a sixth of the total population. The two largest companies between them fly 25 million miles a year. Two of the largest internal operating companies in the world, carrying passengers at the world's lowest fares.
World's lowest fares? That's changed.
Hand in hand with this tremendous achievement goes the task of providing airstrips and ground facilities. Mobile construction units of the Department of Civil Aviation are continually at work, laying down new strips and maintaining the old. All airstrips are owned or licensed by the department, and its maintenance crews have the responsibility of seeing that navigational aids are in operation at all times. Airport beacons for night flying, radio beacons for blind flying, identification numbers showing the bearing of the runway, electric flare paths, and all the other requirements for safe flying. Weather conditions in Australia are probably the best in the world for aviation, but an efficient meteorological service is still one of the main factors in safe and comfortable flying. Throughout the mainland and in the surrounding islands, an intricate system of reporting points has been established. From hundreds of airfields and weather stations, constant information flows to the main city terminal. Nationwide weather reports are made out every 3 hours, and from these overall reports, individual forecasts are supplied for every flight leaving the aerodrome. The pilots plan their flight on the information contained in the weather report, plotting their route and height to obtain the best flying conditions. Before any plane can leave the main terminals, the pilot's flight plan showing every detail of the proposed journey must be approved by the Civil Aviation Control Section at the departure point.
Wind on the climb is 15014. 150. Track of 345. True airspeed of 140.
We're on 345. That's 140. Gives you a course of 348. Ground speed of 153.
023 187.
7,000 feet clear?
Yes, 7,000 feet altitude at 1205, 330 gallons suitable?
Yes, Norm.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm. See you later.
There, Tower.
Clear, got her.
Able now and Love is cleared for Brisbane, 7,000 feet, 1205.
The tower control operator handles all movement on the ground and all movement in the air in the vicinity of the airport. His instructions are given in the international code that is used in aircraft radio work. and the aircraft registration letters are used for all identification. VHAOI is Able Obo Item.
Able Obo Item off at 11:57.
Roger. As soon as an aircraft takes off, the tower notifies the control section of its departure time.
Able Charlie off at 12:01.
The departure time and all relevant details of the flight plan are radioed and teletyped to the destination and to the reporting points along the route which the aircraft will follow. On the flight progress boards at the arrival and departure points, operators plot the movements of the aircraft through every stage of its journey. As each plane takes off, an operator enters on block the details of its flight plan, route, speed, height, time due over reporting point, and so on. He makes out a block for each reporting point. The board operators then have before them a constant picture of all movement in their areas. Flying its guided course along the radio range, the aircraft regularly reports its position over established reporting points. This information is checked against the time shown on the board. If it differs by more than 3 minutes, the pilot is asked for a double check on his position. Once he takes off, and unless an emergency decision is necessary to ensure the immediate safety of his aircraft, a pilot cannot alter any detail of his flight plan without the express permission of the Chief Control Officer at the nearest terminal.
Sydney Radio from Easy Able Mike. Sydney Radio from Easy Able Mike. Now we're in cloud in bad conditions at 7,000 feet. Could we change to 9,000 and fly on top, over?
Flight check. Easy Able Mike is in cloud in bad conditions at 7,000 feet and wants permission to change altitude to 9,000. Could you give me a reading on this?
Roger. Is it clear for Easy Able Mike to change to 9,000 feet?
Able Mike. 7.
Yes.
Not exactly computerized, is it?
There. Right.
Easy Able Mike. Peter 9.
Radio, Easy Able Mike, clear to change to 9,000 feet.
Clear to 9,000. Thank you and out from Easy Able Mike.
The strict supervision of aircraft movement applies equally to aircraft on the ground. No plane can taxi or take off without first obtaining permission from the tower operator.
Mascot Tower from Able Baker. So we clear the line up now. Over.
Able Baker, this is Mascot Tower. Now you're clear to line up and stand by. Over.
Roger Tower from Able Baker. Could you give me a radio check, please? How are you reading me? Over.
Able Baker. I'm reading you 5 for 5. Over.
Thank you, Tower from Able Baker. So we're clear for takeoff. Over.
Able Baker, this is Mascot Tower. Roger, you're clear for takeoff. Will you do a right-hand turn onto diversion? Over.
Roger Tower from Able Baker. Thank you and out.
Able Baker off at 12:26.
Mascot Tower from Butler's Able Obo Howe. Taxi instructions, please. Over.
Able Obo Howe, this is Mascot Tower. Roger, you're clear to taxi. Runway 04. Altimeter setting is 2990. Over.
Tower from Able Obo Howe. Roger. You all want to taxi on the grass. Over.
Able Obo Howe, Roger. You may use the grass, over.
Roger Tower from Able Obo Howe.
In the normal course of civil flying, an emergency is rare, but sometimes one arises. All twin-engine aircraft must be able to fly on one engine, but the failure of a motor gives an aircraft operational priority.
Mascot Tower from Able Sugar Dog. We're 5 minutes out and we've had engine trouble. We've feathered our starboard motor. Request priority landing. Over.
Able Sugar Dog, this is Mascot Tower, roger. You're number 1 to land. Wind from the north-northeast at 8. Altimeter setting 2990. Runway 04. Call on base leg, over.
Roger, Tower, from Able Sugar Dog.
Able Oboe Howe, this is Mascot Tower. Hold your position and do not approach any closer to the runway, over.
Tower from Able Oboe Howe. Am I all right in this position? Over.
Able Oboe Howe, roger. Your position there is okay. Up. Able Sugar Dog, I'll stand the fire tender by for you, over.
Fire tender, this is the Tower. Able Sugar Dog is landing on 1 motor, runway 04.
Flight check. Able Sugar Dog's making a 1-engine landing on runway 4. He lost a motor 5 minutes out. I'm bringing him in on a priority landing.
Roger, Tower. Any problems?
No, it's just a routine 1-engine. He's on short final now.
Mascot looks a bit different now.
Able Sugar Dog down at 12:32. Able Oboe Howe, this is the Tower. Hold your present position. There's another 3 on final, over.
Roger, Tower, from Able Oboe Howe. Oh, stars are closed. Tower from Easy Able Mike, wheels down and locked, over.
Easy Able Mike, roger. Expedite your taxi. On traffic waiting for takeoff, over.
Roger, Dodger from Easy Able Mike, thank you, and cheerio. Able Oboe Howe, you're clear to enter the strip and taxi down for takeoff, over. Roger, Tower from Able Oboe Howe.
All flying DC-3s, please note.
Strict control 24 hours a day over every stage of flight. Supervision that means safety. Day's flying done and the aircraft goes into the hangar for a complete checkover. For safety control does not end with the actual flying.
QSO to start at 11:05, 11:05, VK3AML.
Regularly they're stripped down for a complete overhaul. Each single part, from the air screws to the tail fins, is individually examined. Aircraft surveyors of the Department of Civil Aviation check the full overhaul and issue the machine with a certificate of airworthiness that sends it back to flying. The instruments are put through tests more exacting than anything they'll meet in the air. When the aircraft is assembled again, it's as good as brand new. Pilots, too, are continually keeping up to date, mastering the use of new equipment. A pilot never finishes his training, for the development of new instruments and flying technique changes his job from day to day. And to keep in line with modern development, designers of the Department of Civil Aviation are continually improving existing aerodromes and building new ones. Plans for the new air terminals are as modern as the great new aircraft that will use them. New ground is broken. Rivers are filled in to make runways for the aircraft of the future. Move up then from the land and put the roadways in the sky. Shatter with the roar of engines the menace of distance. Fly over the tops of the mountains and make neighbors out of strangers. Bind together the scattered segments of this huge country. No longer do natural barriers divide the drover of the Kimberleys from the orchardist of Tasmania, or the cane cutter of Queensland from the axeman of Victoria. steel worker of Newcastle and the shipwright of Whyalla know the gold miner of Kalgoorlie. And all the far-flung people of the continent are within a few hours of the cities of the coast. There are no distant places anymore. Just as the aircraft has brought the people of Australia closer together, so too it has brought them closer to the people of countries overseas. Each year, new international operators are adding new routes to the network that links us with the world, adding their routes to the existing routes flown by Australian airmen.
I named this aircraft the Empress of Sydney and wish all who travel in her Godspeed.
Where the sailing ships once took 6 months, the aircraft takes 4 days.
Attention, please. The Qantas Constellation Lawrence Hargrave from London, Rome, Cairo, Karachi, Singapore and Darwin is now taxiing to the international terminal. Will all passengers please proceed through the customs section, which is situated at the far end of the terminal building.
Our Australian international aircraft operate between Britain, Australia and Canada, flying the greater part of the all-red route that circles the globe.
The British Commonwealth Pacific Airlines DC-6 Discovery for Fiji, Canton Island, Honolulu, San Francisco and Vancouver is now ready for departure. All aboard, please.
Aviation and modern Australia have grown up together and they are going forward together. The aircraft has become the servant of the people, uniting the citizens of this country, uniting the countries of the world.
They don't make documentaries like this anymore. Roll-in title, Map of Australia, Stars and Stripes, or whatever. A DOI film, Department of Information, which later became the Commonwealth Film Unit, the Commonwealth Film Unit, and later still became Film Australia. I think it's now called Screen Australia. Has studios in Lindfield in the North Shore of Sydney. I've actually worked there way back 40 years ago, helping with the research on a documentary on the 100th anniversary of the first Australian telephone exchange, a documentary there called Ringing True, and earlier on I worked on a documentary on the 50th anniversary of the first sound films in Australia called Now You're Talking. So you may see, if anybody brings back those old documentaries for late night screening on television, you might see my name on them somewhere. This is VK3AML. Usually at this time, 11:05, we open up for QSO. And for some strange reason, we have more listeners on our site tonight than we ever have. The number peaked at 32 and now it's down to 24. So let's see who's around. And I'll just give a greeting first to those who are on the chat stream, particularly Graham Thomas, Mick, Pirate, ZL1BQD, Rolly, who's up at an ungodly hour in ZL watching this. Paul 3HN, lovely to have you there. Ponderoof, NPI Test, Radio Australia, whoever he might be. They're still around. And John Young. And Harry Thau, VK7HXT. Hello, Harry. Nice to speak to you across Bass Strait. Okay, let's see who's on 147,475. This is VK3AML putting out a CQ call for the usual Saturday night QSO, and standing by for any calls.
VK3ACZ.
VK3 and VK3ECG.
VK3DLW.
We've got VK3ACZ, VK3DLW, VK3ECG, and one other. Could you come back again, that last station?
VK3 Tango Whiskey Echo.
VK3TWE, I can hear you there quite well. Well, look, let's take it round in a circle. VK3ACZ, I hope you were not misrepresented on tonight's videos, but I think we all did very well up on One Tree Hill, and it's a damn good location for everything that we had in mind. VK3ACZ, VK3AML and group.
VK3AML in the group, VK3ACZ. Good evening, Chris, listeners, Dave, Graham, and I couldn't hear TWE here at my location at all. But anyway, another fantastic test transmission for you. I'm just wondering, Chris, if somebody's been climbing up you because you sprouted a bit of justification, which I didn't think was necessary, but I gather you might do as far as your test transmissions are concerned. They're looked forward to and anticipated greatly every week. Yeah, I guess you know what it is that prompted you to say the bit about the legalities of it all. Where do I start? Oh, misrepresented? Well, nothing that a paper bag over my head wouldn't fix there, Chris. Hi. We did certainly have a wonderful day on Wednesday. Would love to do it again. It was one of those perfect days, except for the over-the-horizon radar. The weather was absolutely wonderful. The magpies were friendly. Propagation wasn't too bad. Yeah, not much to begrudge. I was bemused to see Tom's treatment of the car trip up there. Some people will think that I was trying to break the land speed record heading up there. I want to state publicly my car wouldn't go that fast off the end of a cliff. Hi. The film was sped up a little bit going up Mount Dandenong Tourist Road. But anyway, where do I start? 2310 and 4835. Yes, listen to those a lot when they were the Australian Broadcasting Corporation frequencies, and used to listen to the Tiwi Islands football sometimes up there on the north. I am inconsolable about Radio Australia's demise, as many people should be. As I think I've said before in this broadcast, I could sit on my balcony in Hawaii looking out at the ocean with my little communications receiver in my lap listening to Radio Australia and felt at home. It just won't be quite the same thing if I do that with the phone connected to the Wi-Fi system of the hotel I'm in. Sandra wanted to say that she found it very frustrating hearing the Australia, or however it was that Dave was pronouncing it. Anyway, what else can I comment on? Able Sugar Dog, yes, interesting. Love the sound of the DC-3. I just remember a trip I took landing in the front of a 767 at Tullamarine, probably in the late 80s or something like that, and I recorded it on transparency film, and watching it I was aghast to see that the skid marks of the plane's landing went out to the edge of the runway and even off onto the grass. I recently watched a YouTube video and saw a landing probably on the same runway and noted that there are none of those strange markings, so maybe plane landings and the technology has really improved an awful lot. But anyway, more in the next over, waffling a little bit. Oh, that's the other thing. I'm using a new radio, another VHF, UHF radio followed me home from the toy shop, as if I don't have enough already. So hopefully the audio sounds all right. Please comment if it needs to be improved in
Excellent
any way.
audio.
Not that there are a great lot of settings as far as mic gain is concerned. Thank you for tonight's contribution to our knowledge and our entertainment. Chris, VK3AML on the group, VK3ACZ.
Well, I don't know about the entertainment part. That's actually the illegal part, entertainment. But naturally, if the material was produced in a completely boring way, nobody would look at it. So you have to regard that as a grey area. The stuff was of instructional value, I think, and that's the overriding concern. Indeed, I find the Radio Amateur Old Timers transmissions, the weekly ones organised by Bruce Bathols and Tim, I think, very entertaining. Dare I say it? Of course, I could, as I always say, if you really want to have something boring, I could start with a recitation of River Heights, but I don't think many people would stick around for that, and would it be worth the electric power and the internet connection? Around to VK3DLW. Graham, nice to have you there, VK3AML. Are you with us, Graham? VK3 Delta Lima Whiskey, VK3AML.
Yeah, apologies, Chris. VK3AML, VK3DLW, and good evening to Peter and Dave as well. I didn't hear VK3TWE, but then I have got the squelch set fairly hard, so mainly because I quite often run this transceiver on scan, and I set the squelch quite hard so that every other bit of interference on different channels doesn't pop the squelch all the time. So next time he's up, I'll see if I can drop the squelch back a bit and hear him a little. But no, that was fascinating. And no, I got distracted momentarily there because I can actually copy Shortwave Australia on 2310 this evening. It's competing with the power line noise, although that seems to have declined a little bit this evening, or just in the last hour or so. But I think he's just running some recorded music and IDs at the moment, identification at the moment. I mean, it's quite a job to be running a radio station and providing content the whole time. I have a bit of minor involvement with community radio here, particularly 3MDR on 97.1. I'm not, when I say involvement, I do sponsor them, as does my wife's business. And yes, they've got the job of running 24-hour-a-day radio with all volunteers, and there's a program on Saturday morning that I follow particularly, which supports local music groups and artists who, of course, have done it very tough during COVID-19. So yes, it's interesting. It's sort of community radio in a way, I suppose. But yeah, 3MDR tries to cater for a very broad range of interests and viewpoints. So yeah, and I mean, in effect, it sounds like he did a bit of a block. So that's pretty much what I did between Cheltenham and here. I swapped a suburban block for a couple of acres up here. So I can understand that he would want to do that. And one interesting thing was he was talking about the analysis of music scores by music theory, about which I know very little. But there is a really good YouTube channel called Bradfrey, Bradfrey, where he does exactly that, mainly for film scores. And you just realise, or I realised from that anyway, the thought that goes into translating, a mood that you want to create, particularly in a film score, with the type of music and the way that that translates into musical theory. Fascinating stuff. So yeah, I can't hear him on 4835, but that would be expected. But 2310, he's quite copyable, but it's pretty pretty repetitive music at the moment. And Yeah, the only other thing, we did look at a house at Ferny Creek, but that didn't turn out. Anyway, that's enough for one over. I think VK3AML in the group, VK3DLW.
VK3DLW, VK3AML. Well, I have the same worry myself of all the things that Dave up in north of Bendigo has to concern himself with. Is keeping the station going in perpetuity. He's at the moment running it from approximately 3 p.m. to about midnight daily. 4835 works extremely well in the afternoon and evening. In fact, when it opens at 3 p.m, it's only about strength 7 here, quite noisy. Around about 4:30, this being winter, as evening comes on, it goes up to strength 20/9, and for the couple of hours from, let's say, 4:30 to 6:30, it's superb. It's like a local broadcast station, very little selective fade. I know that Dave has an arrangement where he can raise or lower dipoles at his place, and by listening on web-based SDRs, a new development, he can tell when his takeoff angle for his signal is optimum for various parts of Australia, and therefore optimise it for the most. At the moment, the best of the web SDRs to listen to him on seems to be Ironstone Range, I think it's called, somewhat east of Adelaide in South Australia, and quite clear there that most of the recordings that I put up were from 4835 on Ironstone Range, and at the moment he's set up better for 4835 than 2310. I suspect that on 2310 he's running a top-loaded vertical, but he's only been in that house for less than a month, so he probably hasn't had enough time to put down a decent earth mat. But for 4835 you're more talking about skywave on 60 metres as compared to 120, and getting a dipole up fairly close to the ground is still very viable for that frequency, and invariably at the moment I'm getting 4835 better. He's running 200 watts of AM on 4835, about 100 on 2310. That may change also. His licence is for 5 kilowatts, but he said jokingly on the air, "I haven't got enough money to pay for that power." So I think if he ups it, he said just as an aside in one of his announcements, I might put it up to 500 watts though. You can imagine out where he is, 17 kilometres north of Bendigo, I don't think there are any three-phase lines, so powering it may be a problem beyond moderate power. But he's getting out remarkably well in spite of that, and doing incredibly well in terms of listenership, particularly among old amateur radio cronies, of which I'm one. The only thing that worries me about it is he's 69. I think he's about 12 months older than me. I'm 68. And saddling yourself with a 60-acre property at that age is a little bit of a long-term worry. But he's incredibly fit, and so's his wife, Anne. So good luck to him. Good luck to him. Anyway, round to Dave, VK3CG and group. How's your week been, Dave? VK3AML.
Yeah, VK3ECG. Good evening all. Good evening, Chris and Graham and Peter. And I couldn't catch Wayne, but I will try again with the squelch backed right off and see what happens. It's been a pretty good week. Lots of bits and pieces, but unfortunately not a lot of radio this week. Oh, apart from the fact I got interviewed on the ABC for ABC Perth, I think, something like that, but which actually sort of begs the whole issue about the changing nature of broadcasting and so on. So that was in a journalist who really is described as a digital journalist, and basically, although it was interviewed and I might go on radio, it's essentially going to be used for a mixture of podcasting and online print. And if they like it, it might go to radio. Sometimes sometime in the future. But such is the way things have changed. It would always be in the past, you get a request and be recorded or something directly for radio, or you be live to air. But they don't seem to mind mobile phone conversations, even though I said I've got a nice Rode microphone set up to do all my sort of Zoom teaching and things like that. And they said, oh, that's good, but we're quite happy with an ordinary mobile phone. I thought, yeah, interesting. But there we go. Such is the nature of the changing environment. Fascinating. Yes, I can certainly hear 2.310 at the moment. It's coming in quite reasonably strong, about sort of S5, S7 with a bit of fade, but it's up and down a bit. I did get it at sort of well, whatever it means, a single strength 9 on my meter for a while, and then it sort of faded back down again. And I did hear the 4.835 incredibly faintly now, of course. It was unheard, really, right into the noise. But earlier on, today, it was reasonably prominent. I'll have to get, perhaps we should get Steve to do a sort of musical interviews and stuff like that. That could be quite fun. A bit of journalism for Shortwave Australia. That could be quite fun. Anyway, back to you, VK3AML and the group VK3ECG.
VK3ECG and group VK3AML. Well, Dave is using Steve Langley's resources quite a lot. Steve has a lot of recorded material up on his YouTube and Spotify, I think. Spotify? Or it could be Internet Archive, of his various music sessions. And Steve grew up really collecting records, very old records, 78s, and has an encyclopedic knowledge not only of the music and the way it's produced as an academic in that field, but also from the point of view of sound recording history. So Dave has got the best of academic solidity in his programming through Steve 3SL, and no doubt he'll reach out to other friends of his to assist, and I'm sure everybody involved will be only too willing to assist. It's a fascinating development. He, to my knowledge, is the first amateur ever to go for a shortwave transmitting license, and people don't know how easy they are to get. I think the figure that I was quoted for a yearly licence fee for shortwave broadcasting, I might be wrong here, but for Aussie Radio in Sydney, this was a hobby station that was run by a guy just outside Sydney for a while. I think the licensing was $400 a year, which is a fair whack, but it's nothing like the licence fee that they charge broadcasters on television or on the AM broadcasting band. It's virtually given away. So, having had the argument with Michelle Guthrie face-to-face, now the ABC has to eat crow even more by finding that somebody without $1.3 billion yearly fee from the Exchequer, entirely privately run as a hobby, is maybe not doing 100% as well, and certainly no news service or journalism involved. But it's an interesting contribution to Australian media. It's grassroots stuff. And I just find the politics, the technology, the way this is developing into a niche interest area is just fascinating. Never would have happened in the old days when HF was the predominating medium for international exchange of data and whatnot. With that, we go round to Wayne, VK3TWE, and I'm curious to know where you are, Wayne. You're only about strength 7 here, but quite readable. VK3 Tango Whiskey Echo. Boy, that's difficult to say. VK3AML.
VK3AML and the interesting group VK3TWE. Caulfield North is where I am, Chris. I have just moved. I've transferred from my apartment in which I had a dual band antenna on a carport roof into my vehicle. I'm running a dual band super gainer and an FT5D. So with a little bit of luck, I'm getting through. You're coming through like you're 30 plus. So, and I hope that that some of the other listeners can hear me as well. Just wanted to say thank you very much for tonight. That was intriguing. That was quite intriguing because of the fact that I'll just touch on two subjects. Number one, I dropped off one of my clients at her place. I work in aged care at a day centre, and I dropped off one of my clients to her home. And it just so happens that there's a home next door with a whole heap of antennas. And upon doing some research, it was Dave VK3 for goodness sakes, I can't even remember his call sign. And I saw his video on YouTube, and this is earlier this evening that I did the research and saw his video about moving to the country and the new property that he's on. And how's the irony? Here you are broadcasting his shortwave station from Northern Bendigo. Fantastic. That's that was just marvellous. Absolutely wonderful. So that's one piece of irony. Another piece of irony was that on his YouTube channel, I spotted a video of the yourself and Dave and a few others heading down to Deal Island for the I've got my phone with me, but it's not on. The light communication between the mainland, between Victoria and Tasmania. I was part of the original activation team, VK7DI, for IOTA. In 1996, it was January to February 1996, with a bunch of Polish hams, and I'll publish something like that, something about that on my QRZ page, because it's a bit of history. Unfortunately, the photos didn't turn out, which I'm spewing about, but still. Anyway, my FT5D is cracking it because I'm running 5 watts and it's not very happy.
Can you continue?
I can continue just. I think that there's, I don't know if I've got it set to a timeout timer or what, but is it getting warm? No, I think it's just a timeout timer, which I better double check on in a moment. So, yeah, some very interesting irony there, Chris VK3AML from VK3TWE.
I don't know whether you agree, Wayne, but I think Deal Island is one of the most beautiful parts of Australia that I have ever seen. We saw it in extraordinary conditions in a summer with almost ideal weather. It was warm, it was about 20 degrees most nights, as well as the days, so the nights weren't difficult to take. The only thing that was difficult to take was the attitude of national parks, which was, don't use our wharf, don't use our drinking water, don't use our toilets, don't use our showers, don't use our dormitory. The number of don'ts I got from them before we went there was basically made it as difficult to go there as it would be crawling over a beach covered in broken glass. And I saw no reason for that because the previous people that I dealt with when we first planned on going there offered dormitory, power, running water, including hot water, toilets, that's a big one, and that would have reduced our expedition costs to Deal Island immensely. But it ended up with a new regime coming in, and I don't think they wanted visitors on islands at all. That's the general impression I got. And when we got back home, I got a phone call from them suggesting that we had left a plastic bag full of feces behind, and we hadn't, but we saw a number of yachts pulling in and discharging something overnight, and one of them probably dropped a bag near where we were camping at Garden Cove, so we got suspected of being miscreants on that basis. And as most of us want to go back there, particularly Steve and I are looking at going back at some stage, we don't want to create a bad impression. But national parks the world over are making it more difficult to go to the really wild places in this world, and the one that's caused the most trouble is the New Zealand government, which has declared every area under ZL9, which are the subantarctic islands of New Zealand. Auckland Island, I dealt with last week, Campbell Island, the Antipodes Island, the Bounty Island, islets, out of bounds for anybody who wants to stay overnight on them, which means an end to de-expeditions on those subantarctic islands. So the prefix ZL9 will not be heard again, other than on ships that are near those places. Now, I'm a greenie. I admit to being a greenie, but I think that's taking things a little far, and it indicates to me that perhaps some of the national parks people don't realise the benefits of having ready communications back from those islands, HF as it may be. But certainly a lot of that subantarctic area is not covered by satellite communication. Not all of it anyway. But lovely to have you there, Wayne, and sorry if you have to be out in your car freezing to death. Nice that you saw our video. There's another video of that Deal Island trip on my website, my YouTube channel, which covers a slightly different aspects of the whole thing. But Dave was the only person to take the video up on the lighthouse site of our light beam communication with the mainland. I'll stand by for any further people who want to call in. Is there anybody apart from ACZ, DLW, ECG or TWE who'd like to join the group? VK3AML. Nothing heard. Round to Peter VK3ACZ for the second round. And Peter, in response to your query as to whether I'd heard something, yes, through an intermediary I heard that an old Mother Grundy type, I will describe him as, saying to a mutual friend of mine and his, "You shouldn't be having anything to do with that 3AML. That's illegal broadcasting." And I've heard some pretty weak pieces of crap being thrown at me through the years, but that's one of the weakest, particularly legally. VK3ACZ and group VK3AML.
VK3AML and the group VK3ACZ. I'm sorry to hear that, Chris. And when I said the word entertainment in my previous over, I was referring to being entertained in the same way that a QRP contact with Europe on the long path on HF is entertaining. Yeah, I perhaps don't need to go there at all, but yeah, I'm sorry you got that. People scare me at the best of times. They can be irrational, they can have believe almost anything, and yeah, sometimes we just got to roll with it, and yeah, okay, enough of that. Not able to copy Wayne at all. I tried, I turned the squelch right down. I knew somebody was there, and that was about all, which is a pity, but not to worry. Peter Parker first alerted me. God bless the guy. He and you both do an invaluable service to amateur radio with your test transmissions and YouTube presentations and whatever else. But yes, he alerted me to what Dave was doing with Shortwave. Actually, I've got a funny feeling you might have mentioned something about it on Wednesday, but it must have gone through to the keeper. And like Dave and Graham, I had a listen between overs there, and on 4 megs, no, I'm aware that there's something there, but not really intelligible. The 100 watts on the 120 metres is working much better. That's a fairly good copyable signal. Not like the old ABC used to do from up north there. As I said, I used to listen to the Tiwi Islands football occasionally. Quite enjoyed that aspect of shortwave listening. But it's good to know that he's there. Something about the pleased that he's got the frequencies, because I noticed the higher ones, 12080, 9665. Oh no, I'd be stretching it. Most of the other frequencies have been taken over by the Chinese. Well, if you scroll through the shortwave broadcast frequencies now, almost all of it is Radio China in its various forms. So it's great to have some local content. It really is. And what brilliant copy you got listening on the Ironstone Range SDR. I meant to comment on that before. That was Q5 copy. That was really, really quite impressive. And he said there that he didn't think he'd be going overseas. Well, I hope he's copyable in ZL. He should be after dark. But it'll be interesting to find out. I'll be pleased if you get some signal reports from faraway places. And just quickly, just as an aside, something silly I did, as I said, I'm talking on a new 270 radio tonight, a Yaesu, of course. I already had an FTM 300. I just went and bought the 200. Don't ask me why. A bit of an impulse. But with the 300, because it's a dual band, dual receive, I finally got onto the International Space Station. Now, when it was first coming over with its, now what is it, 2 metre uplink, 70 centimetre downlink, I was getting killed in the pile-ups. It was worse than the worst competitive pile-up on 20 metres in amongst the kilowatts. So I decided to let it rest for quite a while, and just last week I finally heard my voice coming back, albeit the pass was at 2 o'clock in the morning, so there were no takers, but I considered it mission accomplished. So I finally ticked another item off the bucket list. That probably sounds very, very lame. But anyway, back to you, Chris, VK3AML and the group, VK3ACZ.
VK3ACZ and group, VK3AML. Well, it's interesting with the ISS. You can imagine the number of VHF stations they must be able to access from up that high simultaneously. It'd be difficult to find a time when one came through on its own. Main advantage of VHF from a ground-based point of view is that because it doesn't go much beyond the horizon, the same frequencies can be reissued time and time again across a large country like Australia. But if everybody was trying to receive from the ISS, talk about must be bedlam up there via their transponder. What else did you say there? The sound of the Pratt & Whitney engines from the DC-3s, yes. Somehow jets aren't the same, are they, from that point of view? I think jets are actually quieter. My memory of the only time I flew in a DC-3 was when I was very small. I was taken up for basically a joy flight around Melbourne. This would have been in the 50s, late 50s, and I would have been 5. The sound of the motors was such I had to yell to be heard by my mother. And I was sitting on her lap at the time, so that gives you some idea. Chinese taking over the international frequencies. Well, yes, 12080 and 9665 are basically international communications frequencies, whereas the 60 metre band, 4.83 megs, is akin to something between what we get on 80 metres, which is interstate coverage, and what we get on 7 megahertz, 40 metres, which is bordering on international but not terribly well compared to 20. So you can imagine they get a bit of the characteristics of both bands. In the old days, like going back to the 70s when I was an SWL, fairly avid SWL, 60 metres, around 4.8 megs, was a great band to listen to transmissions in Pidgin English from Papua or from New Guinea. And Radio Belong Papua used to come through quite frequently. I don't know what's happened to that now. I would guess that possibly Papua is now covered more generally with FM or indeed satellite communications. It's, even the most primitive of villages now seems to have their satellite dish, as friends who went to East Timor, to impoverished villages there, told me. So around to Graham, DLW. with the music groups. I will look up that Brad Frey YouTube site. I'm always looking for new material, and it sounds like that might be an interesting discussion point, but not so much for this Saturday. Pardon me, sessions. I should hit the mic button for that. But more for Dave, who may be interested, because I know that Dave is accessing a lot of what Steve 3SL has done via YouTube. So, Rounder Graham, VK3DLW. Incidentally, it was nice to see you at the Sherbrooke Club on Monday, and I hope I've done them justice. They deserve a bit of a plug. VK3DLW and the group VK3AML.
No, indeed, and likewise, Chris VK3AML in the group VK3DLW. And incidentally, Peter, your audio sounds fine. It sounds like you, put it that way. No, but that's fine. And that's fine. So, no, very readable, very comfortable audio level. Wayne, I could just hear, I'd say readability 4. I had to back the squelch right off. And I think the difference is, and it depends on where exactly you are, Chris, but I suspect you're either just this side or perhaps not very far over the Mount Waverley ridge, let's call it, whereas I presume Wayne at Caulfield North would be well beyond it. And my antenna's not that high, although I guess we're at 230 metres here, so we're about not quite half where you were at One Tree Hill. But so I have a good takeoff that way, but I think that ridge does make a difference whether the station's to the other side of it or not. And when I get this tower up, I think the thing that'll go on top of it is another VHF UHF antenna, and it'll be interesting to see the difference between the two antennas once I do that, from what the other 8 or 9 metres actually gains, if anything. And the historical aircraft footage, that was fascinating too. Of course, having dragged the Dandenong Ranges into it, of course, I recalled the. I wonder when that film was made, because the Kaima crash was in 1938. So I wonder if it was before or after that, because that brought about quite a lot of changes in regulation and improvements in navigation aids. And quite a lot of the blame for that crash came from cost cutting in the responsible aviation department at that time, particularly with the secretary of the department, who had stalled on expenditure to test new navigation aids and safety measures. So because I think there was a Royal Commission. So it'd be interesting to know where that film sat in relation to that particular incident. And it was interesting to hear the waypoints for the Constellation. It sounded like a tour of the world, really, compared to this, what we're on the eve of now, or have from Perth, and that's a single flight, direct flights from Perth to the UK. And I guess sooner or later, when I think they get the 350s, they'll be able to do them direct from Sydney. But I think with reduced passenger numbers by the sound of it. But I saw the DC-3s there. I've flown up to Woomera a couple of times on Dakotas, which were the military equivalent. Always interesting to see them start up. The ones I flew in were actually owned by the Aircraft Research and Development Unit of the RAAF, and they had a couple. They weren't all airworthy at the same time, and they were always transferring parts between the two, including while we watched on the tarmac, because the first time we took off, one leaked oil everywhere, so we landed again. And they said, oh, the other one's fine, except it's missing a few linkages out of the tail. So they promptly, while we watched, took parts out of the tail of the one that leaked oil and put them in the other one, and that's the one they flew us to Woomera in. They had a bit more discretion as to how they actually managed the work on aircraft, I think, as well. And the bits on digital radio was interesting. It will be interesting to see what comes of that. And I had one other point, I think. Oh, and the noise on startup. Well, jets are quieter now. I used to live with my parents about, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles from Adelaide Airport, and the old T-jets, they didn't whisper if you were outside, that's for sure. The low bypass engines were very loud, but the new high bypass engines are a lot quieter and a lot more friendly and a lot more efficient, of course. And I wonder if Dave plays Going Up the Country by Canned Heat. Seems like a pretty appropriate song, really. VK3AML in the group, VK3DLW.
VK3DLW in group VK3AML. Yeah, interesting about the Dakotas and going up to Woomera. I don't imagine you can say very much about that. It's a protected area, and a lot of the activities there, I think, are also covered by the Official Secrets Act. Dave 3ASE, who's a lot more daring than I, has actually been up to the first atomics test site in South Australia, EMU, the remote one right up near the Northern Territory, South Australian border. And it's full of stories about the area. I remember him showing me a bag of fused sand, green glass, which was the fusing of the sand that was created by the nuclear blast. And he said, "Oh, you might like to have a few pieces as souvenirs." And I stood back about a foot and said something effective, "Oh, no thanks. I would prefer to have a Geiger counter go over them and see if there's any plutonium in there." Oh, dear, dear, dear. But Dave's a more daring one than most of us, and certainly what he's done with shortwave broadcasting this week has left a lot of people scratching their heads or with their mouths open saying, "What the?" But he seems to be very happy. I think probably the initial joy of being out of the urban rat race for him is wonderful, because for years he worked to deadlines with news coverage at Elstonwick for the ABC, and I can imagine getting rid of deadlines must be an absolute release for him, as is the getting of the country property with all of the animals and whatnot that are involved there. 60-acre property in a low-density housing area where you don't need to go through hoops to get building permits for antenna masts or even lattice towers. I imagine will be no problem there, because he can stick them with a 68-acre property and lots of tree cover well away from the view of any road. Very, very good. And I look forward to getting up there to having a look at the place eventually. And if you see this, Dave, be aware that Prue and I have discussed it, although Prue's in no condition to get up there at the moment. What were the other things I was going to mention? The film dates from 1950, so it's 5 years after the Second World War. Would have been after the Kaima disaster, and also after all of the developments that they had in the war in radar, which was almost unknown pre-war. I think pre-war they had Bellini, Tosi style long-wave direction finding for airports, that system where they had beams with crossed dipoles, so that if you were flying in at one heading you would hear a dot, and if you flew in another heading you'd hear a dash, and if you flew in a third heading you would hear the dot and the dash when you were exactly on course. Rather a complex system, not terribly good, affected by things like night error being long wave, and with ionospheric propagation that really throws it right on the division between night and day, which is the major thing that was wrong with long wave beacons, apart from the fact that in tropical areas they get drowned in pickup by tropical storms. not very good long wave for the tropics. It's more for the temperate areas, and I think there's a good reason that long wave broadcasting only held on in Europe, which is fairly high in latitude. Okay, we go around now to Graham VK3. Sorry, not Graham. VK3ACZ, Dave. And note that you couldn't hear Caulfield North. It's probably the fact that I am, in fact, on the ridge that runs from the Police Academy north to Mitcham Reservoir, as you called it, Graham, the Mount Waverley Ridge. I'm on top of that at about 120 metres elevation, perhaps a little bit less, 110. And the antenna's fairly good, so we have a good takeoff west and east. VK3ACZ and group, I think it is, VK3AML.
Yeah, VK3AML and the group, just a little pause there. Yes, I think you're probably right, Chris. I couldn't hear Wayne, and even taking the scorch off to see what would happen, so I listened online, and that worked well. Warrandyte's a funny place in that sense. We lose a lot of, even if I'm down in Warrandyte itself, I will often, DAB radio will just disappear. As you go along Yarra Street, it just drops in and out with a sort of sudden death of digital signals that no longer meet the threshold. And that's pretty common. In fact, whilst Telstra works reasonably well, for mobile reception, Optus is almost impossible. And regularly people find themselves, even with Telstra, in places in Warrandyte down to 3G or no signal. Which causes some of the businesses to have a little bit of difficulty with their card machines from time to time. They did until they changed those arrangements. But I think it could be a lot better. But I suspect that a lot of people had issues and concerns with the various towers that they might have put in to sort the problem out. There's that very interesting one on the way out towards St Andrews, where they've got the fake tree as the tower with all the branches and the antennas coming from that, which is quite nice to see. And it does stick up, though. It's pretty obvious what it is. I don't think they've done terribly well, but I'm sure it kept some people happy. I was just looking at, Chris, at your when you change your video camera over to your over the left shoulder shot with your wax cylinder player. I think you should get a little model of a dog looking down the horn in the light of his master's voice. I think that would be a nice feature for your wide angle shot there. Other little points. Noise on DC3. As I said, I have actually flown some of the commercial one once when I was, again, very young, probably about 8 or 9 or something like that, in a car transporter across the channel from the UK to France. And that was great fun, and I spent most of the time in the cockpit, which was great, but not possible these days, of course. Can still hear Shortwave Australia on 2310. It's really fading very badly now and disappearing into the noise, but it was there a few moments ago. So it's still working. It'd be just interesting to see what Dave can get out there, and in terms of other programming and bits and pieces like that. I think there's probably a bit of an opportunity to do a number of things, and getting a bit of pre-broadcast material on record would be great. And I think people don't mind having repeats of various things like that. Certainly entertaining material, and would be really good. What else do I have here? The only other issue that I've been playing around with is I'm going to be visiting the UK in August, by myself, unfortunately, but just because I'm trying to catch up with family, and of course I haven't been able to see my mother for the last sort of 3 years. So with COVID and bits and pieces, so it's an opportunity to reconnect with some family and things like that. So I shall be doing that, and I was trying to get my suitcase organised, and then realised that my daughter's rabbits had eaten the rubber off the wheels of the suitcase. So it was, just towing it along on a flat surface meant that it was like crossing a cobbled surface or a gravel path. So I had to take all the wheels off the suitcase and actually sort of literally grind them down so at least they were smooth. And the pest of house rabbits, that's all I can say, the pest of house rabbits. There we are. Back to you, Chris, at the group VK3AML and the group VK3ECG.
VK3ECG and group VK3AML. I've seen rabbits do some strange things, eating wheels off wheeled suitcases is not one of them. Years ago, a friend of mine, Alan McGavin, one of my oldest friends, I met him on the first day of primary school, sometime in February 1959, 63 years ago. His parents had a cat, a big white cat which ate too much and was like a blimp with hair. And they had a rabbit which used to have a fascination for sniffing the cat's anus. And this rabbit would leap around with its nose firmly up the cat's bum. And the cat would take it and ignore it and take it. And then finally you'd see the cat getting extremely frustrated and turn around, bare its claws on one paw and just would give it a swipe. And the rabbit would stop pestering the cat for all of about 15 seconds before it re-indulged its anal fetish. Oh, God. I watched that as a kid of about 10, and if only we had video cameras back in 1964, I could show you. But occasionally when we get together, Alan and I discuss Peary the cat. Why he was called Peary, I don't know. It might have been that he was Snow White and he was like Robert Peary, the discoverer of the North Pole, while the cat was discovering the cat, while the rabbit was discovering the cat's South Pole. Okay, sorry. Anyway, I'll hand it round in case Wayne is still in his car, poor guy. Hoping you haven't frozen, Wayne. VK3TWE and the group VK3AML.
I believe I'm transmitting now. VK3AML and the group VK. Sorry, Chris, I'll
Sounds like your batteries are gone.
No, this should be a bit better, Chris. This is the external microphone for the FT5D is it's just a 3.5mm to 4-pole 3.5mm plug, which plugs straight in, but it doesn't sit proper. Excuse me. So it easily pops out. So, but I'm using the internal mic now. So. Oh boy, what a topic of conversation. How do I answer this? I will say that, oh dear, it's a laugh. It's okay, I did start the car up and I have warmed up the car. So I'm nice and toasted, which is absolutely fine. And I've taken off the timeout timer as well. That's the hand. Just two other things, just quickly. I'm moving to Croydon. I should be back in my neck of the woods. Long story short, I grew up in Blackburn North. I've lived in Kilsyth, Croydon, Churnside Park, etc. Moved to Caulfield for work, but now I'm getting work back in Forest Hills at a seniors day centre, and I'm moving back to my brother's place in Croydon. Intermittently, during the weeks leading up to September, I'll be back in Caulfield on the weekends to do a bit of washing and tidying up and what have you, while I clean the apartment because the lease is finished on September the 23rd, which is grand final eve, I believe. So that's all happening, and so I'm looking forward to. And I'd like to check out Sherbrooke, the radio club there as well. I did. Doing a bit of research the other week, and I found them online. Like, I had no idea. I'm familiar with the EMDRC, etc., but Sherbrooke, no idea. So anyway, that's another thing on my list when I move back to that area. And on one or two occasions, I've been up to One Tree Hill in my car using my FT5D and also an FTM 300. Which I have, one of the newer Yaesu dual band 270 mobile rigs, which has been absolutely fantastic. Once again, into the same antenna, the Diamond 7700 Super Gainer, which works wonders. And I often thought, this One Tree Hill, what a great spot for a ham meter for like-minded individuals to get together. Lo and behold, there's the video, there's the proof. So, yeah. All right. Thank you once again, Chris, for tonight and for the callback. It's been wonderful. I have moved my car a little bit to try and get some of the other signals a little bit higher. No idea if I can be heard, but I'm on the south side of Caulfield Park. If anyone cares to Google map that one. Open fields, try and get a little bit of a clearway to the eastern suburbs with my boot-mounted Super Gainer on my VY Commodore. I'll say 73s, I will put it down because I believe this is the last one. Thank you once again, Chris, and to the group, and I hope to catch you again soon. So VK3, back to you, VK3AML and the group from VK3TWE.
No problem, Wayne, and very nice to have you here. And we're on most Saturdays 9:30 until late. We usually wind up about midnight. So I don't intend to follow that slavishly, though. There's no way that Prue and I are going to give up our social life for the sake of ham radio, but for the nights that we're in, no problem. And Prue understands that it's a creative outlet. As for Dave with keeping the station going with programming, I mean, I find it hard enough to get together 90 minutes worth of material for video for this each week, let alone doing between 5 and 8 hours a night every night of the week, which Dave apparently is sufficiently au fait with the technology that he can, and he has sufficient recorded material that he can put it on automatic replay and command the transmitter by mobile phone from wherever he is with tones known to himself. He's done that for years with his home rig in Ormond. And incidentally, if you were doing elderly people aged care work and you inadvertently dropped off people next door to Dave, he has a Russian family that's next door to him on one side, on the corner, I think. And I don't know the other family, but I know that they're fairly quiet people. They probably will appreciate the removal of the big 160-metre antenna, which probably will be moving north in due course. Big 60-foot Hills telemast that's been there for about 25 years. Worked very effectively on 160 metres. And Dave had a separate dipole much lower for 80 metres, but 80 metres, if you're trying to get skywave, particularly short distance skywave, the height of the dipole doesn't seem to be particularly critical. With One Tree Hill, the only disadvantage of it, and I imagine it would affect 70 centimetres more than 2 metres, is the heavy tree cover. That's not the case on Burke's Lookout or at the observatory, but unfortunately both of those are lousy with VHF RF and not very good. Whereas the southern end of the Dandenong Ranges, the two places that Peter VK3ACZ chooses are Belgrave South, which has some high spots that he can use, and of course where we were this week, which is One Tree Hill. And both of those seem to be very low in noise for HF. Neither of them have overhead power lines that I could locate within 100 yards, possibly much further. Okay, Wayne, well, thank you for being there, and we'll hopefully catch you up next week. You'd be very welcome to lob in to the Sherbrooke Radio Club sessions. You probably saw the photograph of us all having an informal chinwag, and then people bring along videos of various things that they do and throw them up on the screen for the edification of the group. And this last session we had a show and tell with a chap who's experienced in building lithium iron phosphate power supplies and makes them available complete with chargers at a very moderate price for storage systems of 30 or 40 amp hours, which are easily capable of supplying portable ham radio equipment, QRO, high power. So we take it back now to Peter VK3ACZ, perhaps with a pause if anybody else would like to call in. I don't know why we've got so many viewers tonight of all nights, but it peaked at, good heavens, that viewers on the YouTube channel peaked at 32 tonight, which is about 10 more than it's ever been. It may have been because we had the coverage of Dave with his new shortwave station. Dave Ranson mentioning on text they chewed the wheels on the rabbits chewed the wheels on the vacuum cleaner as well. Maybe they're dust bunnies. Oh, bad joke, Dave. And ZL1BQD, Rolly is still with us. Rolly, I think, is in Auckland, where it's 2 hours. It's now 8 minutes past 2 in the morning. Rolly, at your age, I feel that I'm endangering your life. Although you're always very welcome. And Mark Sierra saying it's Mark VK3ZMS. Been watching and listening for the last 45 minutes. How slow is the stream? Or to put it another way, why hasn't the date changed on the screen to your right to Sunday? Dave, we run this YouTube live stream with 30 seconds of intentional latency, and the idea of that is that if we ever get congestion and buffer underrun, the 30 seconds allows it to, that's in reserve, allows it to catch up without buffer run. But it's 9 minutes past midnight at the moment, Mark. 3ZMS, I have spoken to you somewhere. I can't just place it, and it was probably a very long time ago. Could have been from Tony Sanderson's shack when it was, 40 years ago when he was in Park Street, Elstonwick. Good Lord, the people that pop out of your past. ZL1BQD is in the middle of a CW contest, so of course he's up all night. And I know that he's got something like 150 countries on 160 metres with CW. So he'll be looking for that magic time between 3 a.m. and dawn when the D layer thins out sufficiently for 160 metres to work really DX. I know your type, Rolly. Unfortunately, what's the old saying? Late to bed and early to rise makes a man baggy under the eyes, and you can see him here too. VK3ACZ, I think, is next in line. VK3AML, with a pause if anybody else wants to break in.
Nothing heard. VK3AML in the group, VK3ACZ. Well, my rabbit story, and had a bit of a chuckle at Dave's crass joke, hi. I had a rabbit that was chewing the 300 ohm feeder wire for the old black and white TV. So rabbit needed to be removed from that part of the house for fear that he might start attacking the 240 volt flex. Could have a different result to just upsetting TV reception. But anyway, thank you, Graham, for the readability report and the mention of the Koyima crash. Yes, something that sends chills through me because it's not impossible to imagine the flight crew suddenly seeing the trees through the fog with enough time to go, oh bother, before everything went black. And I remember in the 80s first going there, obviously a long time afterwards, but you could still see tree stumps which I presume were cut by the collision with the plane. A lot of trees had grown up around it, of course, too. And it would have been late enough that I'm sure people went round with metal detectors and made sure there was absolutely no lasting remnants of the Koyima, although I wonder if every last piece of glass was ever removed. But cringeworthy stuff that they were aiming for Essendon and overshot it by quite a fair bit. I did what Dave did before. I listened on the stream to Wayne talking, so I got to hear his voice. And he mentioned the FTM 300 that he was using, which is my other radio that I mentioned before to get my voice to come back off the repeater on the International Space Station. Interestingly, that it says, and I'm leading towards your 20 amp hour battery, Chris. That's where I'm going with this. The Yaesu manual on that and the radio I'm talking to you on now, the FTM 200, both claim 11 amps on transmit. What actually happens with the 300, it's 8 amps on both, and on this radio it's 7.5 amps on VHF and 8.5 amps on 70 centimetres. But I've got to say, I was so impressed by how your 20 amp hour battery held up, because you really hammered it. You did a lot of transmitting, a lot of a pretty heavy duty cycle, and you got hours out of it, including all the pictures. But I'm going to out you to everybody with one little thing which really amused me no end. It was you saying, at the drop of the repeater I will send the next image, and I'll leave you to explain to everybody else why you made that little humorous slip up, which don't worry, I'm not laughing at you, Chris, I'm laughing with you. VK3AML in the group, VK3ACZ.
Yeah, well, it was force of habit, VK3ACZ and group, VK3AML. And in fact, the battery did fail after 2 hours because it was never charged properly. As it turns out, the charger that I had was in the process of failing when it was charging that battery. I took the battery back to the place I bought it from, thinking that the battery was defective when it was actually the charger. And I'm going to have to buy a new one for about $75, a 4 amp one. I've now got these batteries, which are a little bit more expensive, tiny bit heavier, 20 amp hour. I'm holding it up to the camera now. Lithiumite polymer. They're sold by Ultronics. These particular ones are sold by Ultronics, but they have a more sturdy screw connection on top, and that'll be good for high current operation, much better than spade connections. And generally these are more solidly constructed, and they're a different shape. The other one was kind of squarish. These ones are narrower, and in fact if I lie them flat I can put them into those transparent plastic boxes that I carry, so it fits better for my purposes. So yeah, I've upgraded, not in amp hours, it's still 20 amp hours, which is adequate for what I want. As long as it can deliver 10 amps I'll be very happy. The 7 amp hour lithium batteries I had previously were just, you could trust them to about 5 amps, that was it. But I needed a little bit more for high power. And looking further down the track with my light beam communication, we now have single chip LEDs that can take 8 amps continuously. You can imagine how bright they are, intense. And through a suitable lens we can send modulated light beams with audio or indeed video, full duplex. And I'm hoping that that will generate enough light flux to have modulated light extending over the horizon by cloud scatter. That may present legal problems with the Department of Civil Aviation or Air Australia or whatever they call themselves for the last couple of weeks. But I'm sure that if we have to do it at night and inform DCA, we'll probably be able to talk over the horizon, in which case I may crack the world record set in Utah recently, 174 kilometres. I might be able to stretch it beyond 200, and that will be a bit of an achievement. But it'll require a lot of flux at the transmitting end and a lot of sensitivity at the receiving end, and possibly some dry ice to chill the detectors. I won't go too far into that. What else now? What else? I don't know whether Graham is still with us. Let's see. I think it's Graham's turn. VK3DLW. Are you still with us, Graham? VK3AML.
I am indeed, Chris. VK3AML, VK3DLW. Although I will make this a final. Excuse me. But yes, it's that sounds like a plan. Going for the world record there. I just briefly harking back to the. Well, I wouldn't call it advice you get about legality of things. It just, what amazes me is that people are prepared to offer opinions without really knowing the answers or having done the research to actually find out the answers. That never stops them from offering an opinion, unfortunately. I find the same thing. If I have a problem with my computer or whatever, sometimes I'll go on to a user group. And what you really want is somebody who's experienced exactly your problem and actually knows how to solve it. But all you get generally is theories from people who haven't experienced the problem. I mean, sometimes they're useful, but it's far better if it's someone who can say, yeah, I had that problem, know exactly what it was. And I had the same problem when I was installing the third display on this laptop. It had a computer wouldn't run Visual Basic, and finally someone came up and said, did you used to have McAfee on there? And I said yes, and he said, there's the problem. It has an intercept in the registry to stop running Visual Basic, and if you've uninstalled McAfee, it's a dead end. So I had to go in and edit the registry. But you know, what I really needed was somebody who had actually experienced the problem, not tell me, oh no, you've got to reinstall this, reinstall that. Well, I tried that countless times, didn't work. Anyway. And yes, and Roger, on your visit to the UK, Dave, we're fortunate. We went to the UK and I visited such relatives as I have there. In September 2019, we nearly postponed it to 2020. I'm so glad we didn't. Otherwise, yes, it would we'd be even more sorely disappointed. We had a couple of other trips planned which didn't happen, however. And Chris, I'd have to say, from your story in 1964, I'm glad there weren't video cameras back then, to be perfectly honest. And Wayne, Strength 2, that time, Wayne was almost noise-free, so he was perfectly readable on that over, and whereas he hadn't registered on the S-meter on his first over, or earlier overs, this time Strength 2 and perfect copy. And I think, Dave, you're about Strength 8 here, and I'm just looking at the map. I think we must just get you by grazing around at Warrandyte, grazing around, or just making it line of sight around One Tree Hill, because you must be very close. It must be very close to being in the way. And yeah, well, I can actually see the ridge that you're on then, Chris. If you're on that ridge, when I look down the valley from here on a clear day, yeah, I can actually see Mount Waverley. So that's why you're 60 over 9 here. That would explain it all together. And of course, Wayne, you're very welcome to come to the Sherbrooke Radio Club. We always make folks welcome. And yes, on programming, look, I know we're friends with a lady who does the program on, a 2-hour program on Saturday morning with music to fit particular themes to which she asks people to contribute, and usually arranges about 3 interviews, and I know how much of her time that takes up. So just to provide sort of reasonable programming or small amounts of programming with reasonably good production values is a major thing. So it'll be interesting to see how Dave feels about it in about 3 months' time, I suppose, in having to pull together interesting material and content for his site. I could see him on the audio scope here. I could tell when he was playing music because you could see the distinct frequencies in the audio display here. But then it was beginning to fade out. Anyway, I think that's all I have. So, and I do need to hit the hay, I think. I may or may not get up for the Sherbrooke Net tomorrow morning. We'll see how I feel at the time. Back to you, Chris. VK3AML in the group, listening for a short time, but then I will be QRT. This is VK3DLW73, and thank you so much for once again putting that together, Chris, because as I've been saying, I know how much effort, or have some inkling of how much effort goes to putting something like that together. 73s.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Just before you go, the Sherbrooke Net, pardon my ignorance, when is it and which frequency?
3605. It's not exclusive to the club at all. It's just that they're mostly members. So it's 3605 at 8 o'clock on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays and Sundays. But there's also one on the Upway repeater, which the next one of those I think is on the 18th, I think. Go ahead.
Okay, I've noted all of those. Thanks, Wayne. I don't currently have facilities for 80 metres sideband. I have AM. And it's not frequency agile, it's just one frequency on 80 metres. A very, very old rig. I think it might be germanium transistors in it. But thanks for that. And thanks for the compliment. And I'm sure the compliments on Dave's actions will get back to him. I have the impression, I may be wrong, that whatever dipole Dave is using has a north-south orientation, because it seems to be getting into Sydney and into Adelaide far better than it's getting into Melbourne. Or at least that's the impression that I've got. I'll quiz him on that. I'll send him a text message the next few days and find out up there in Neilborough. He's near Eaglehawk, if you know where that is, north of Bendigo. I think if we hand it round to Dave, Dave will be tying the ribbons. VK3, unless anybody else would like to call in, VK3ACZ with a pause. And isn't it wonderful that Steve has inadvertently got involved with Dave's shortwave transmitting? About 30% of Dave's transmitting is currently Steve 3SL's musical contributions, which Dave is siphoning with permission off Steve's YouTube channels. VK3ACZ and group VK3AML.
Yeah, VK3AML and group VK3ECG. Yes, no, it's fantastic, and Steve's stuff is absolutely fabulous. I mean, I don't get to hear it a lot, but certainly I think I hear sometimes the Friday evening ones he does, and some of the weekend things. But they're great fun, and I don't have a wonderful signal from him, but it's not too bad. I noticed that that's still, it's 2-3, is it still there, 2-3-1? Yeah. Some noise there. I'm not quite sure whether he has finished, because I think was he finishing at midnight, I think, anyway. But yes, and the Wayne, yes, the problem with those 4-pole plugs from the Yaesu handhelds is they are quite an issue, actually. You can get an adapter or try and make one with but getting the hold of the 4-pole plugs isn't that easy. But there's an adapter that you can get which will run to a 3.5 and the 2mm one as well, and that allows you to use a separate microphone or whatever that's probably a little bit more stable, and gives you a bit of a range of different mics you might want to use. Yes, fascinating that Peter, you got the FTM 200. I'll ask you sometime exactly why, because I have been looking at whether I should get a mobile rig at some stage, because that's not what I'm. Well, I've used a sort of mobile rig, but one sort of just dedicated to doing some FM, because otherwise I've got the handheld and this rig, which is the sideband one, which I got some time ago, actually, which I never, I'd only used it as a desktop radio, but really decided to go portable, which is the 857, and it's a very early model one, not even the D, so it has a few issues, as we discovered the other night when I went onto the sideband net. One of the problems is that the frequency display on sideband is wrong. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, that's going to be a pain to try and get that sorted out. And discovered, going on the web and having a look around, that this is a known fault. It's only for apparently UHF, EHF sideband, and everything else on the radio is fine, except that it's off frequency for which is extremely irritating. I thought it was a clarifier. People were suggesting it might have been a clarifier, and I thought that might have been the case, but no clarifier. It's just a fault on the radio, and I don't know why, and everyone seems to just say, well, that just goes with the territory. So it doesn't really help. But yes, the UK trip hopefully will be good. And it's going to. I have one of my friends did go to the UK recently and did fly to Perth and do the direct flight. I'm not sure that I really are looking forward much to that idea, but I quite like having at least hour and a half, 2 hours or whatever in the changeover of aircraft, and gives you a chance to really stretch your legs, although I have to say on aircraft I do wander around a fair bit. I don't like sitting down all the time, and I'm sure that's a lot better for you. So I shall be revising my aircraft mode of travel and all the things I need to do. But I've usually travelled fairly well on these sorts of things anyway, so it doesn't bother me terribly. But yes, it's going to be really interesting to see how Dave manages to get material. I'm sure there's lots of other stuff that Steve's got that will be fantastic, and of course there's a lot of interesting stuff that you've done too, Chris. That could also be of interest. Anyway, I will go to C73s now and disappear myself, and wish everybody a good week ahead, and hopefully you get some good DX, Peter, and with some of your nice pod of operation. As I said, I must come out with my low power QRP setup sometime and have a go at some of those sites. I know One Tree Hill, but I've not actually operated from there. I've always stayed the other side, but it will be fun to have a go at that at some stage. Cheerio everyone, 73s, and hopefully chat to you next week. VK3ACZ, now off and clear. Cheers.
Have we got any other breakers before we close? VK3AML, standing by.
Just one last quick comment from me.
Yeah, shoot.
Yeah, VK3AML and the group VK3ACZ. Yeah, well, Dave mentioned the the FTM 200. Probably a bit of overkill that I ended up with both, but I decided that the 300 could stay in the shack and could be my satellite radio if I bothered, and the 200 would actually go in the car. I just want to make a quick shout out for the diamond magnetic base antenna. I don't know the name of it. It's supposedly, you know, the half wave at 2 meters, 3/4 at 70 or whatever. I put the meter on it the other day, and the SWR on any frequency on either band doesn't go above 1.8 to 1. Just absolutely astounded at how good it is for a magnetic base antenna. Just absolutely amazing. And Dave also mentioned the flying from Perth to London. I've forgotten exactly how long that is, but I consider the economy class or cattle class from LA to Melbourne at 17.5 hours, whatever it is, to be a form of torture. So I wouldn't be in a hurry to fly direct to London either. But anyway, Chris, I just wanted to say again, thanks so much for the information that was passed on to us tonight. Very educational and very, very worthwhile. I would like to sometime or other go out portable with Dr. Dave as well. I've spoken to him on 15 metres, but not had the... Well, I suppose we did. We were at Columbia Park one day, but maybe we could consider that sometime in the future as well. Anyway, thanks again, Chris. 7-3 to you, 7-3 to everybody else, and we'll be looking forward to next Saturday night. VK3AML, VK3ACZ. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers, Peter. And I don't know whether I mentioned this, but most of the time you smile, but it disappears when I point a camera at you. And I hope I hope I'm not the cause, but the impression I'm giving of you on video and whatnot is that you rarely smile. Peter, I can assure you, folks, smiles almost all the time except when I switch the bloody camera on. So apologies if that's the cause, Pete. That's about all for tonight. A couple more things to mention. Tom VK3FTOM shot about half of the material I came back with up at One Tree Hill. And interestingly, he shot it on a very flash mobile phone, which, in spite of the fact that it's only got a fixed focus lens, produces videos of remarkably high audio and video quality. I've been really surprised with what Tom can do with that, and I can only assume he's got one of those mobile phones up around close to $1,000 that'll do everything bar make you a cup of tea. The other person I'd like to thank, partly for staying up so long, is Rolly, our friend in Auckland. I hope he's not sacrificing his health for us. And, Rolly, I've read, if you're seeing this by replay or direct, I've now read the National Parks New Zealand statement on the usage of ham radio in the subantarctic islands, and I think they've gone a bit over the top. That they think that ham radio operators will automatically upset the environment. It's the biggest overreaction I can think of, and I know that in Australia's subantarctic islands, Heard and Macquarie, that ham radio operation is still welcomed as far as I'm aware. In fact, a lot of the people I know on Macquarie are ham radio operators. With that, I'll close unless called. VK3AML giving out a final call for anybody who wants to make a final comment. VK3 Alpha Mike Lima listening.
I'll just say 73s, and thanks once again, Chris from VK3TWE. I'll go QRT. Cheers.
No worries. On one of these days, if you come back for another session, I must talk to you about Deal Island. It really is a gorgeous spot and a fascinating place historically, as I think you'll agree, Wayne.
Chris, absolutely, 110%. We just very quickly, we landed on Deal Island. It's to the very the west what group is it? I can't remember the name of the group of the islands, but the museum there, and we actually stayed at near the caretaker's house, and I think the caretaker was Will, if I recall.
Yeah, up to 1990, in the 1990s, up to 1991, the lighthouse was manned. When it was demanned, I think a family were on there for about 5 years afterwards before the National Parks instituted their Friends of Deal Island system, where volunteer couples take on, by rotation, the manning of the island. They had a couple while we were there who were doing a 3-month stint. The lady's name was, oh gosh, it escapes me right now, but they were very welcoming. Back to you.
Yeah, well, I won't go on because I've got to head home and get some shut-eye myself. But in a nutshell, I was working at Tricky Dicky's at the time in Burke Street, and there was a group of hands which Polish origin, Australian hands, but they were doing their expedition, and I just happened to get my limited call VK3TWE, and they invited me. They said, "Look, we've got a spot left," and I just happened to jump on board. It was a great experience. Unfortunately, no photos, but just good memories, because as I say, their photos did not turn out, which I'm. Yeah, but there is evidence out there in Google Land or what have you. But nevertheless, yes, we will talk about this again very soon. I'd love to go down there again, that's for sure. Chris, thank you once again for the evening, and if anyone else can hear me, thank you. I'll say 73s, cheers from VK3TWE. All the best, have a good evening.
Thanks for calling in, Wayne, really appreciate it. Okay, this is VK3AML, now closing the group, heading for the cot, and I think it's been a very successful night. Just looking at the numbers there, how many views have we had? 98 views, and we haven't yet closed the net. That's unprecedented. I don't know quite what I've done or what weather has driven people into their shacks tonight, but I think that's the best we've ever done for live views, although some of my stored video presentations have got 600 for no apparent reason. It's hard to tell from one week to the next what will be of interest to people. You can but try. John Young, I note JCar sells the 4-pole plugs. If you really want 4-pole plugs, I think I can supply a few. I used to have Yaesu rigs that used them, and I think I have curly cords with the 4-pole plug, but I have no use for them. So if anybody is particularly after them, contact me, please. My email for future reference, VK3AML@optusnet.com.au. That's VK3AML@optusnet.com.au. Very welcome to receive reports or whatever, but if anybody is in particular need of the 4-pole plug for microphones, I may be able to help. Certainly have 4-pole plugs. I'm not sure whether they're for Yaesu or whether they're for the old FM900. But I'll seek them out anyway. I have them all stored away in a plastic box, one of those transparent plastic boxes. Okay, any final comments by anybody? VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, standing by. Nothing heard. VK3AML is now clear of 147,475. Good night, fellas. And thank you also to the people who are on text, on chat. You can imagine trying to look after the transmitter and think of what I'm going to say, queue up the video. It's very difficult for me to simultaneously talk to people on text chat, but I appreciate that you're there, and I certainly read the comments on the way. Rolly, particularly, lovely to see you there. I have a lot of time for New Zealand, but you'll be disappointed to hear, Rolly, that most of my travelling has been done Christchurch, Dunedin and Point South rather than North Island. I have a very good old friend, a colleague who lives in Wellington. I must get back there at some stage, but my wife has been very immobile with the spinal surgery, so that means I'm anchored to the house to some extent, haven't been able to travel very much, and that's one of the reasons I've been doing these Saturday nights so regularly without a break. So good night. Mark Sierra, see you. John Young, likewise. Ponderoof. Mick, yeah, Mick. Is that Metal Mick from out Glenroy Way? I'm not sure. If it is, thanks again for this. If you are the Mick who supplied the second camera, thank you very much for that. You can see I'm using it from time to time. Not as much this week as last, but I will be using it for some outdoor coverage from time to time. So with that, and Mark Sierra, note you saw me last at Jeff Court's funeral. Yes, that was a very sad loss. He went downhill very quickly. I had known Jeff since 1976, met him when 3CR was being built at Armidale, when he came in as a very raw recruit, very nervous in front of a microphone, and watched him develop into a very fluent pop music broadcaster. Saw him in his final days, I think, being involved with 3VYV, Yarra Valley FM, producing some really slick programming there. And don't forget to have a listen for Dave after 3 p.m. daily, Dave 3ASC that is, under his name Shortwave Australia. I think he's having a dig at the old people who shut down Radio Australia. Shortwave Australia, 2310 kilohertz at night, but the one I get most strongly during the late afternoon, particularly around 5 p.m, on 4835 kilohertz. That's Dave's Shortwave Australia, 4835 kilohertz. On that frequency, he's running 200 watts from north of Bendigo, and he's getting out at least to Adelaide and to Sydney like a ton of bricks. So with all of that, I guess it's good night. I'll just find the button and we'll catch everybody next week. All the best.